Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Salam, hello, welcome, peace to you all, and welcome to another edition of Iran versus the Epstein Empire. This is episode 4 of this continuing live stream series, a collaboration with our dear friends and colleagues at Resistance is Fertile and friend of the show, Professor David Yaghoubian. I'll turn it over to them in just a moment, but I want to remind also to tell people that the title for today's edition is Endgame, Tehran or al-Quds. So we'll be talking about that interconnection between Palestine and Iran in the axis of resistance. And in fact, I think given the opening of many new fronts, very active fronts in Lebanon and in Iraq, that it is perhaps time that we redub this series Axis of Resistance versus the Epstein Empire, because it is no longer Iran standing alone in the face of the imperialist aggression and attack, but it is a true regional war, not only in the sense that they have targeted U.S. bases and facilities and military assets around the Middle East and throughout the Gulf, but that others have joined in from the Axis of Resistance now to make it a true, as I said, regional war. So we will talk about this and all the other developments. But we have with us today David Yaghoubian. David, it's great to see you again. Welcome again back to the stream. You're on mute.
Thank you. Great to see you all. It's a little bit difficult to not multitask here, considering the shellacking that the Zionists are receiving right this minute. But good to be present with you all.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also have Benji Schoendorf, anti-imperialist psychologist, co-host of Resistance is Fertile. Benji, it's wonderful to see you.
And humble student of psychological warfare. And I want to start this stream by, in honor of International Working Women's Day, paying homage to, there is this picture that sticks into everybody's mind, this Vietnamese peasant woman leading a genocidal Eurasian Epsteinian pilot. And the new picture, we don't have it, but you know what it should be? It should be those women engineers, Iranian women engineers, that have participated in the design of missiles so advanced, no one on planet Earth has them, and we haven't seen them all. 60% of the engineers on those missiles are women. This is what People's War means today. Comrade Mao, Chairman Mao said, women hold up half the sky. Turns out that in Iran, women hold up 60% of the final battle sky.
Excellent. And joining us as well, Indi from Indi.ca, actually in Sri Lanka, but .ca will take you. Indi in Canada, we will claim you if you'll have us.
No, please don't. That's embarrassing. I was just in college there at the time. I disavow
Canada.
We're
trying to bring you back in. But anyway, I wanted to also co-host of Resistance is Fertile, and of course Indi.ca on Twitter, and you can find his work. And I thought maybe we'd give you a chance to start off, because I know you're going to have to leave. And you have a lot to say, and you published some of it in a recent blog, as you do. Everyone should go check that out. And I'm wondering if you have any kind of summary thoughts of the state of affairs now that you want to share, that you could get us kicked off on this episode today.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, guys. Thank you for this opportunity to chat with you guys. It's a delight. So this is sort of like a sit rep for. It's actually really hard to keep up. This is one of those weeks where centuries happen, and within a day you have about 25 years worth of events. I think there's things going on right now. But if we're going to summarize, first off, if we just quickly summarize the general strategy, what they're doing is disabling the shields for Israel, which are in the Gulf. Then they're just trying to sort of exhaust and wait out the U.S. fleet. and the final step is to blow up the death colony, which Nasrallah actually predicted a long time ago. So now, actually about 2 days ago, Hezbollah opened up the northern front, northern Palestine, and they've just been walloping on there. I think the first day they took out 5 Merkava tanks. And this is just an example of, so there's 20 events that they listed on March 6th. I'll just pick 2 at random. So they targeted a gathering of Israeli army vehicles advancing towards the town of Kaim and achieved direct hits on them, forcing to retreat. They targeted a gathering of Israeli forces in Kiryat Shimona with a swarm of drones. So it's not just that they're doing the usual guerrilla tactics. When Israel came back into southern Lebanon, they thought they'd cleared that area, just like they thought they'd cleared parts of Gaza, but Hezbollah fighters popped up like ghosts. It's not just that. They also have air control. So the Israeli troops cannot even assemble on their side of the stolen border. And then on the 7th, they reported 33 operations at a targeting depth of 135 kilometers. They targeted 12 military bases, 2 barracks, 6 cities and settlements, 3 factories, 13 troop and vehicle gatherings, and 3 clashes. So Hezbollah is back. I would say it never went anywhere, to all you haters. And there was a fierce firefight in a town, I'm pronouncing everything wrong, called Nabi Chit. And as one Rokaya Shamsuddin reports, a resident of Nabi Chit recounts not only seeing fighters from Hezbollah, but he also witnessed local residents fighting. I saw with my own eyes a woman carrying a rifle and firing at the Israelis. So whatever the Lebanese comprador, like, it's essentially a French government because they've surrendered. Whatever that government says, Hezbollah is defending the people, and they're with the people. And then within Palestine, so what all my friends want to see is like, why isn't Israel getting hit? Why isn't Israel getting hit? And I keep telling them, like, they're going in order. They have to take the shields down first, then they get to the colony. But Israel is getting hit. They're covering it up. But as what Haaretz said, which is, I think, the thinking man's Der Stürmer, they said experts suggest that the experts suggest that the damage to Iran's missile monitoring capabilities may even be linked to shortened alert times in Israel, which dropped to 2 or 3 minutes, significantly shorter than the relatively longer warnings in previous launches, which is exactly what the Iranian guys have been saying all the time. And on any given basis, the sort of red alert map around Israel looks like the sex offender map of Israel, which is sort of red dots everywhere. And then what we found, so the new guy, the new spokesman, he's from, I think that David can correct me, Qatam al-Anbiya, so I guess the Iranian military spokesman. He apparently speaks Hebrew, and English, so he's given some updates in Hebrew and English. And even though we may not be, today we're seeing stuff out of Israel, videos getting out, but for the past few days we haven't, but I'll just read you some tweets from Israelis. So I don't recommend translating, auto-translating from Hebrew. As a joke goes, it's like finding a lost page from Mein Kampf. But someone's done it.
They disabled it because of that.
Yeah. So this is someone called Mayan Rhoda. They're saying, I broke my leg running to the shelter in the middle of the night in war. I'm not even part of this. Well, I'm sorry you are. And then someone saying, anyone who thinks you can live like this for another week is living in a fantasy. Sure, people who don't have a bomb shelter attached enough to go up and down, that's impossible. You can't sleep more than 2 hours straight, meaning you can't function. It's simply a physical matter. So I think while you can stop, like, I guess, Israelis from posting video, you can't stop them from complaining. There's a lot of complaints on Twitter. And then this is worth harking back to what Nasrallah said after the Al-Aqsa flood started. He said, he's speaking of the Gaza side, he said, victims crawl from underneath the rubble and say, we all sacrifice to the service of the cause. Do you believe that these Israeli people who were collected from the corners of the world diaspora, have you ever heard of any of them saying, my blood, my beloved ones, and my home can be sacrificed for Israel? None. So if we're talking about, there's massive wartime censorship of the dead and of damages on the empire's side. But their morale must be trash, because the people in Israel know that they're being bombed, and the people and the American soldiers know that they're being bombed, and they also know that they're not being acknowledged. And you see on the Iranian side that they acknowledge and they honor their dead, and they acknowledge and they mourn their damages. And there's just this like huge, Benji can speak on, but there's this huge emotional block within the empire where they're just in complete denial. And then I'll skip over that. So, and then as I said, the main thing is targeting the Gulf, so that what I call them the Gulf apostates. President Pezeshkian made some news by sort of clumsily apologizing, which I think he's a well-meaning guy, and everybody had to walk it back. What the Iranian armed forces have clarified is that the president emphasized the condition for stopping the attacks is that no hostile action is taken against Iran from US bases in these countries, which is a policy that is not new. So that refers not just to the Gulf states, but Azerbaijan and Turkey, which are, Azerbaijan was involved in the 12-day war, and then Turkey is just like a NATO snitch constantly. But they have almost complete fire control over UAE and Bahrain. I saw some report that said, well, yes, the missiles have dropped, but they've simply run out of stuff to shoot at. I've personally seen them blow up the 132 radar in Qatar like 2 or 3 times. It's like that Simpsons meme where like, stop, it's dead already. This stuff is never coming back. I think people need to understand that these military bases in the US are in Bahrain are never coming, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE. They can't rebuild a bridge in Baltimore, which is like miles from their capital. There's no way they're rebuilding complex radars in the Middle East, which they actually need China's help to do. And so the final point I'll make is that the body bags and the casualties are coming back. There's someone from like the NYPD, he had like a medical incident in Kuwait. There's some other guy who had like a health incident. I mean, I think we all die from health incidents, but they're covering up. There's suddenly going to be a lot of training accidents and like people having heart attacks, but the body bags are coming back. There are reports from their base in occupied Germany that the military hospital there has halted sort of regular service, so labor and delivery. And then there's reports of like ambulances and so on there. And what the Iranian guys have said is you don't see the amount of air ambulances and stuff coming out of here. I think the Iranian reports I've seen, there's at least 200 dead in one incident, and it's in the, I would think it's close to 1,000 now. And then the Iraqi front has reopened. They've hit up some Halliburton facilities, which is a good idea. And then as my final point, Ali Larjani, who's he's like a national security like leader, he referenced a quote from Nasrallah, which I think is important to close with. He said, when the coffins of American soldiers and officers begin to be transported, when they came in vertically and leave horizontally, and he makes this sign, which everybody recognizes, it's then that the Trump administration will realize that they've lost the region and will lose the elections. And if we achieve this goal, and will be achieved, inshallah, the liberation of al-Quds, meaning Jerusalem, will be a stone's throw away. When the US leaves our region, these Zionists will pack up and leave. We might not even have to fight a battle against Israel. So that's the state of play since on the 6th and 7th, and to be honest, it's already pretty out of date.
Excellent. That is an outstanding roundup. I'm trying to scroll to find Ali Larijani's post because I reposted it. Where he
so no, see, he's good. He's a good poster. He didn't post. There's no text in it. It's just an image.
No, it's just it's just like a meme. It's just a still of Nasrallah, going like this, which is a reference to the speech.
Yeah, it's also a really smart reference to the fact that this war.
You're very low. Can you get closer to your mic or boost a little bit?
Yeah. It's also a really smart reference to the fact that this war, more than any other, is a psychological war.
Yes.
Not only, but it is like, I changed my Twitter profile by coming out as a foot soldier in the shitposting brigades of the free people of the world, and let's shitpost them to hell. It looks like nothing, but it's super important. Like those people are just bluster. They're nothing but narcissistic bluster and image projection. Every little shitpost that punctures that is doing the work of God. You can't pick up a gun, you can shitpost. I swear to you, brothers and sisters, it's the best thing you can do. And remember, never ever to repost any enemy propaganda. Except to mock it or to put it in scare quotes, it's never information coming from them. Even when they tell the truth, it's to lie to you. So be very careful. Every word counts. And it's been beautiful to see all that, the shit posting is getting off the charts. And we have, of course, here with us one of the elite snipers of the shit posting brigades, being Brother Indica, of course. And today, he put this thing out. I need to read it because it's just absolute classic. These morons just made Khamenei younger. referring, of course, to the selection of Khamenei's son as the leader. I was speaking to my son about, the possibility that he could be selected as the leader. And I said, imagine that they killed me and then you were selected to take my place. Do you think, how do you think you'd feel towards the people who killed me? And he said, I wouldn't rest until they're gone for good. And
And it's not
this
that just,
is
I think his wife. I think his wife was killed also, and
his wife, his mother,
and his. I think he's lost a child also.
Yes, it's the price that these folks are paying is just heartbreaking.
Well, to that point, I mean, this is something that our dear friend, comrade, and colleague inside Iran, Helia Doutari, reported that he has been announced as the new leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The news is spreading as people observe the night of the Qadr during Ramadan. I see people crying, hugging one another, and exchanging congratulations. A phrase widely circulating on Persian channels reads, Khamenei just got younger. Alhamdulillah. So Indi is in the best of company in solidarity. And this is what solidarity with the people of Iran leads to, is thinking the same way in recognizing the significance, the importance of this transfer of power and the decision to appoint a supreme leader. I would say that I think it's very important to note a couple of things. One is that the constitutional continuity took place following their processes, which were not disrupted. They did not declare an emergency. They did not, have that three-person kind of temporary interim leadership council just kind of continue or appoint someone themselves. They continued with their processes, their system, in the way that they want to express their sovereignty. This is all about sovereignty, and they have demonstrated it yet again that they will maintain consistently their principles of governance and their system of rule. And that is just a really impressive point in the midst of war under this absolute onslaught. No shortcuts. Resistance is a hard way. It is not for the faint of heart, and they continued no shortcuts to do what they think is constitutionally correct according to their principles. The second point is appointing the new leader, who is also a spiritual leader as well as the political leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran. On this night is the most holy night, most sacred night in the Muslim calendar. According to the Shi'i tradition, they believe that the 19th is the most likely date, the night of the 19th. Tomorrow would be for them the 19th day of fasting, and the day that 19th begins at sunset. So this night is the night, just like Christmas Eve is the eve before Christmas. Likewise, Laylatul Qadr, the most holy night, is tonight, and they are receiving this news during Laylatul Qadr, hoping that this is not only a blessing, but a harbinger of what is to come. Because what is one of the meanings of this night? Laylatul Qadr means, many people translate it as night of power. So, that's of course significance, a night where there is great spiritual power available to every believer to connect themselves with God. But it is also the night of decree, Qadr, the fate for the coming year. It's when the decisions are made, for this coming year. Fates are decided and determined. And indeed, perhaps this is a determining act by saying, just as Benji was saying, we're going to appoint a person who will be the most motivated in these circumstances to maintain the integrity of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the revolution of Iran, and carry it forward to avenge the martyrdom and to achieve the final goal. So this is just very momentous, it seems to me. And I know, David, you had some thoughts about this question. Benji, you're ready to get into it. Perhaps
I'm sorry, guys. First, I want to apologize because, as I've said before, I turned anti-imperialist on September the 11th, 1973. So I was 10 years old at the time. And I'm literally feeling the feelings of that 10-year-old, seeing the CIA put people in stadiums chop off the hands of this guitar player, Victor Jara, doing all this stuff and wanting them to have their comeuppance. And it's come today, and I'm like a 10 years old. Yeah. But I want to quote my, a previous co-host, Sasha Rombots, who did so much to get, this RIF podcast project off the ground with me and Nunja. He's on the Substack, and he wrote this beautiful thing that I want to write. Indica's writings have been bringing me much joy and hope. Tell him the line, he never, so talking about martyr Ayatollah Khamenei, of course, he never lived to see it, but saw it clearly. Is a line straight from the gods. Everybody, do yourself a favor, give yourself the greatest gift, and go and read Indica's blog every day, because this guy is a writing machine. He has a way with words. He'll have you in stitches and also in tears, and elevate your vision of everything you think you already know about whatever subject you think you know about. An absolute gift of the gods.
You guys are glazing me too much. I feel like a donut.
Well,
There
great,
you go.
man. I
There's
second that.
example,
I
folks.
second everything Benji just said. Absolutely.
Dave, I wanted to come in on this question of the appointment of Mujtaba.
Yeah,
Many.
I'd like to. I mean, everybody's been following the events, like second to second. It's I don't know that there's ever been as fast a news cycle, as I said in our last meeting. So, and it just has been nonstop. But in thinking earlier about the things that I am more broadly reflecting on, I am thinking sort of in this one corner of my brain as I'm taking all this in, about the specific appointment of Mojtaba Khamenei, he was one of the known potential candidates. There were several, and as was discussed at length, from the haters to those who were considering who might be viable to lead the republic, should something happen, either through health or through war, to Ayatollah Khamenei, there was always this issue of, okay, well, even Khamenei himself is known to have not been motivated necessarily to pass this on like to his son, because of this issue of, say, dynasty, monarchy, and lineage. And this is what I'd really like to reflect on more broadly. And please, if folks will excuse me for talking in some more generalities and broad swaths, but I'd like to address family, lineage, dynasty, and monarchy just briefly in this sort of framework, in this context today. Iran clearly has had a very long tradition of monarchy. Okay, and I would like to remind people who might think, well, no, it also has a very long and strong tradition of anti-monarchism. Yes, indeed, but viewers should be aware, if they don't know the history, that until Ayatollah Khomeini's speeches in 1970, Hukumat-e Islami Velayat Faqih, Islamic government is the government of the jurist, a 4-part lecture series in which he basically spun Shia Islamic doctrine on its head. And what he basically argued was this, and again, broad swaths here, but as 12er Shia Muslims, we have had it ass backwards, basically, since the Imam of Time left us. What we did was we said, okay, the Imam of Time, the Mahdi is gone, and in his absence, it's incumbent on us to maintain as good of an Islamic community as we can with the leadership of the ulama, the learned, the scholars, understanding, and here's the point, that there will be a Yazid of the age in every age who is going to oppress us. There are going to be evil kings, power usurpers like the Yazid, who are going to maintain this illegitimate lineage over Shiites. And part of that suffering is part of being on the team and in the club. And when Imam Mahdi decides that we've had enough, he'll come back and, with Jesus on his right hand, and the evildoers are gonna face his righteous judgment. What Khomeini argued, and this is why he is a radical, not a traditionalist within the Shia Islamic tradition, is that what we actually need to do is create an Islamic government, okay? Instead of being passive, we need to slit the throat of the king. We need to, as ulama, as the learned within the society, guide the society create a just Islamic society, and then, and only then, will the 12th Imam potentially look down in favor on us and do whatever he's going to do. And again, I'm talking in like broad swaths and generalities here. Therefore, one could see there's this, say, inbuilt impetus within revolutionary Iranian Shia Islam to oppose certainly monarchy, but then, well, what about lineage? What about family? What about dynasty? And this is where it gets really complex, and why I've been ruminating on it is because the very inception, if you will, of the Shia Islamic tradition, that is the Shiat Ali, or the partisans of Ali, the homies of Ali, who thought that Ali should have been the caliph, the successor to the Prophet Muhammad. The tradition, it is essentially rooted in lineage. It's rooted in family. It's rooted in the importance of the descendants of Fatima and Ali having a role in guiding the Ummah and guiding the global Islamic community. And it's about family. And if you will, as they'd say in Nolans, it's about who's your daddy, and who's your daddy must be is a member of this lineage. And so if people are following where I'm going with this, the fact that Mojtaba Khamenei was selected, it's very complex in this context, because on the one hand, one could say, well, wow, what is this, like a sort of dynasty of clerics, you know? On the other hand, the scholarship, the traditions, the struggle of Shiites since Imam Ali to Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, all the way through Jafar al-Siddiq, Imam Mahdi, it is in many ways maintained and embodied, and is a living tradition through individuals such as Mojtaba Khamenei. And so he embodies the living spirit of the continuation of this struggle. So that's really, in a sense, all I have to present here, in the sense that this is complex, right? It's on the one hand, there are, let me just say this, I'll add one more thing. I believe one of the reasons that Ayatollah Khamenei would have generally just looked down on the idea that his son would have been the best person selected to become the Rahbar is this: the qualifications are scholarly qualifications, and these scholarly qualifications are given by fellow scholars. There is no rule book that, oh, well, I got ijazah for ijtihad 5 years ago, so, you know, let me be a Hujjat al-Islam, or let me be Ayatollah. These ranks, if you will, within 12 Shia Islam are given by your peers. And then the status of Marja'i Taqlid, which is the source of imitation or emulation, is provided by the people themselves, right? And so I really believe that Khamenei, as a scholar himself, would argue, hey, guys, what are the odds that out of all of these educated mujtahids, that my son would be absolutely, like, you know, the best one, the best qualified? And indeed, we can all see that likely there would be. And thankfully, there are a multitude of scholars in Iran who could be qualified to serve in this position and who would do a good job. But the fact that Mojtaba Khamenei has both the religious qualifications, the national qualifications, if you will, of having served in the Iran-Iraq War, and the qualifications based on lineage, which, as I've just said, remain critically important to the Shia tradition. Furthermore, he is the son of Khamenei, and the most likely to be opposed by the Yazid Zaman, which is Donald Trump, the Yazid of the age. He is the most brilliant and perfect candidate, and now new third supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Well, Dave, I think, I think Monica in the chat said that she wasn't happy with Trita Parsi's tweet about this. I don't know if there was another tweet about it, but this one, does have one kind of point that reflects exactly what you said. Very few have insight into the deliberations of the Majlis-e Khobregan, who elect the new supreme leader. But at a minimum, it appears that by choosing Mojtaba Khamenei, the former supreme leader's son, a clear signal is being sent that Iran will not surrender and that it is in no mood for a deal with the U.S. After all, they chose a supreme leader whose father, mother, wife, and son were just killed by Israel/US. I think that's probably correct, that he is a choice that symbolizes that Iran does not intend to surrender, and that the time for negotiation, it's now the path, to victory. And I think we've been kind of talking a little bit about what is the end game.
Adnan, please, can I just add one thing though?
Yeah,
People
sure.
must understand though that this is really brilliant, because this isn't just a trolling appointment. This is not at all, oh well, Trump is like Khamenei, therefore, and this will really show him that we're
it's
keeping
not what Trump
going.
would do. Okay, it's like
an
it's not a
extremely
Trumpian sort of
position. And so Mujtaba Khamenei, like many of his fellow mujtahids and ayatollahs, have the qualifications, but he has that additional, if you will, trolling potential. And so again, I just think it's brilliant. And the last thing, and then I'll shut up, is Ayatollah Khamenei himself, he didn't get a vote in this. Okay, so this was his peers, who ultimately themselves are democratically elected by the Iranian people, making this decision from a basis of national interest, as well as the scholarship and educational background that is required to be the Iranian Supreme Court.
Yeah, it's a lot like what the, in terms of a constitutional body, it's perhaps not so different in a way, it occurred to me, as the Electoral College, the way it was originally, understood, that you would elect people who from your community, your locality, that you thought, were sober, serious people, and they would choose together, in some kind of conclave, the next executive, basically, of the U.S. That's sort of been changed in the U.S. system, but it still is a pretty undemocratic kind of, quite apart from the general undemocratic character of U.S. democratic processes. But in general, it is electing people for them to choose a leader. That's very similar in some ways to constitutional provisions of the U.S. And, it's worth saying, I just watched a video earlier today that was released only in 2018, I believe, that was the video of the deliberations of this council when they chose the martyr supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And it's interesting. I mean, he said, I don't have the religious credentials at this stage to have the authority for this position. People won't, take my views seriously, because they shouldn't, they should take the Ayatollahs, and, I'm not yet an Ayatollah, and so on. And he was himself in favor of a council as a transitional kind of body for some period of time. But in fact, they voted to make him interim leader, and then later ratified making him the leader. And so it's just that humility, I think, that was important in his own election. And so you can understand that. And he looked, actually, if you watch the video, you can find it, it's on BBC Iran. If you watch the video, he is very sincere when he's saying, it shouldn't be me, there are other better candidates. And when they're doing the vote count, he looks so sad. And I said, like, he really doesn't want to have to do this job. And so I think there is something serious and significant. It's somebody like that.
And not out of laziness, if I may say. Not
no,
because he wants a quiet
he
life, out of genuine humility, right?
I mean, he would have, of course, he had been serving the Islamic Republic and making many sacrifices. So that certainly is not the case that he didn't want responsibility. It's that he, had a...
I think we should add that this isn't a prize. Like, this is a burden and a sacrifice and an immediate target on your head. It's not like, he won this like beauty contest and he gets a house and a car or something. This is a heavy burden, and God be with him. I wouldn't want this for my son. I wouldn't want this for myself. But
absolutely.
I'll just add the selection. It's not even a selection. The promotion, if you will, of Shiite ulama, that is the learned scholars, through the various ranks of what would generally be like their legal scholarship, which leads them to these titles, if you will. These titles are not something that you get because, hey, man, I was here at the madrasa for 5 years, and so give me my ijazah, my license to do interpretation and law. fellow scholars start recognizing you as having that thing, and they start just referring to you by that title. And anyone who is actually worthy of that title will, for the first probably 6 months, tell them they're crazy and that to call somebody else Hujjat al-Islam because you're confusing me with someone who actually knows what they're doing. And that just makes them want to call you Hujjat al-Islam more, because clearly you also have that humility, which is almost necessary and incumbent to eventually one day have people in the hall refer to you as Ayatollah, Ayatollah. And the same thing goes. Are you kidding? Like, this is completely different than, if I can generalize, but our more like Western framework of ladder climbing where, hey man, I served in this office for 3 years. And so, give me my little ribbon and badge and I'm going upstairs to the next office. You might never get promoted, or you might get promoted, if you will, very quickly based on your scholarship and based on what your peers, and I want to emphasize again, based on what the society sees in you. Because the title of Marja'i Taqlid, which means the source of imitation or emulation, in the absence of the 12th Imam, the doctrine developed that without the 12th Imam there to guide us, who should we sort of style our lives after? Who should we kind of try to be like, And the Marja'i Taqlid emerged, a source of imitation or emulation, who is a Shiite scholar, right? So here's the deal, though. It's not like, here is your Marja'i Taqlid. Everyone will, it's Ayatollah Sistani. The tradition, it's organic. It's grassroots, if you will. Who is your Marja'i Taqlid? Whose sermons speak to you? Whose tone? Whose style? Whose looks? Who appeal to you? That you find out who the Marja'i Taqlid is by looking at who comes to Friday prayer and where there's standing room only inside, and now people are spilling out into the streets. That isn't something any government or any clerical hierarchy controls, and that is the power of this Shiite clerisy, if you will, the role of the scholars in the society, which is both, if you will, like daily kind of civic guidance, but also ultimately political and economic guidance. If you look at the biography of Mojtaba Khamenei, you'll be blown away by this guy's resume.
Yeah, and also, not to put too fine a point on it, just as Indi was saying, this isn't some like prize of a beauty pageant. The man clearly now has a target on his back for assassination. That is something that the United States, Israel, I think, has explicitly stated that they will be, this happened to his father. They, plan to try and assassinate him as well. So, this is not some, great honor to bask in, I mean, this is a very serious responsibility, that you take up because you are willing to sacrifice your life for your people, for the revolution, for your religion. That's the key qualification here. The fact that he has accepted it means that he has stated, I am ready to do so, whatever I can for my country. And if it means my life, then that is a price I'm willing to pay. But speaking of Marja, I thought it might also be kind of interesting, to show something that another Marja has made.
Can I make just one quick point in two sentences about?
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
There's a good chance that, the Mossad and Shin Bet and all of those guys, they're diverting resources that are already stretched very thin to find a way to assassinate this guy. And, it didn't work the first time. It's not going to work the second. It's not going to work the third time. But it's very interesting that they're so obsessed by this idea that assassinations are going to solve their problem. It never solves popular revolution, but that's all they can do, because
that's what we've seen.
Is them.
Yeah, we've seen that during this, is that they thought that the assassination of Ali Khamenei would lead to collapse and regime change and would all be over very quickly. We've commented on that. That's a very racist, Orientalist kind of approach that they took, of utter arrogance. But we saw how, it didn't affect. I do think it is a good idea that they've chosen a new leader soon, so that there can be, hope for the people, and, give a greater sense of unity and continuity and so on. But it's clear that the system that is in place for the defense of Iran, it was functioning, very well. And we don't think that the new leader has had a whole lot to do with that, current, the last couple of days battle plan. We'll come to some of the, maybe talk a little further, but Indi's roundup, really showed and suggested that this is a very well, carefully thought out plan that is proceeding with the leadership that exists. And even if you remove this layer of leadership, they have a coherent strategy and organization that has what we would call strategic depth. It doesn't rely on a few charismatic, figures. But I wanted to show this because we were talking a little bit about the authority of the marja taqlid, the, what is it? How do you, like the source of emulation, of guidance that you should emulate, like, i.e., those who have authoritative opinions that Shi'i people should follow one. Like, they have lots of options, but they should follow one to have a consistent source of Islamic legal and doctrinal interpretation for their, religious practice and so on. And so probably one of the most important in the world, maybe the most outside of Iran, certainly, and maybe globally, is, of course, Sayyid Ali Sistani, who's known as the Grand Ayatollah Sistani. He's a marja, and he is in Iraq, and people may recall some years ago how important he was in being able to return to Iraq. Now, he is not in the same kind of resistance matrix, you might say, of like, there's a range of opinion. It's not that he's opposed, but that isn't what you would identify Ali Sistani with, the kind of
with Velayat Faqih. He is not down with Velayat Faqih. He does not agree with Khomeini on this, which is critically important. Let me just add, Adnan, before you go on. Many Iranians who are deeply religious, 12er Shiites, who did not, because of their traditional orientation within 12er Shiism, that is not the Khomeinist version, when Khomeini became supreme leader, their out, if you will, was, well, Sistani is my marja-i taqlid, right? Which is completely valid and legal and must remain legal and always has been within Iran. So it's very subtle, but I'm sorry for interjecting, man. I just wanted to make that point. Sistani doesn't actually support the guardianship of the jurist. He's a actual traditionalist pre-Khomeini 12er Shia scholar. And so I would say probably, well, it's kind of split. You couldn't like I don't have like a numerical sort of metrics for it, but really I'd say at least like half of 12er scholars aren't exactly down with this Iranian framework, but that gives the marjayat, if you will, deeper roots and power across the region and outside of Iran. But again, sorry for interjecting.
No, that's absolutely so useful to know that he opposes that principle, which is the basis for the Islamic Republic being the way it is, that its structure, its constitution. But so that's why it's even more impressive and significant and important that he has issued this fatwa, this authoritative juridical opinion that he says issued a fatwa on the Iran war, decreeing collective religious obligation for communal defense. Okay, so this is authorizing, military resistance to the US and Israel in this war, saying that it is an absolutely important collective religious obligation. It is incumbent upon the Muslim community to band together and to fight against the imperialist oppressors. And the last time he did that was June 2014, when ISIS captured Mosul, which was, of course, also a very serious threat to the integrity of mainstream Muslim kind of life, to have these takfiri jihad who are supported by the United States and Israel, undermining, kind of the newly freed, Iraq that was in the process of removing U.S. Control, right? So, and demanding that they be given their sovereignty. So this is pretty momentous, that he has given this. This is very authoritative. He's maybe the most, close to, or maybe even the most revered and followed Shi'i cleric in the world. So that's very significant. And
Indeed, Adnan, can I just add right there? This is one of the reasons why what you just said about him being probably the most important is valid. And this gets complex, but when Khomeini created Velayat Faqih, and therefore there would be this Marja who also has a fixed political position within a system. And I'm generalizing here, but many traditional 12-verse scholars, does that mean therefore he has to be all Iranians Marja? Now, your average Iranian revolutionary nationalist would say, well, of course, he's naturally going to be everybody's Marja, but not everybody necessarily agreed with this system, even those who were deeply religious and traditional. I think it just helps sort of underscore that point. I hope that was clear.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and I'll just add that this is tactically important, because if you look at where the Americans and Israelis are bombing in Iran, they're going through Iraqi airspace a lot of the time. And what we've seen is that their base in Erbil is pretty constantly on fire. I don't understand what exists there anymore. And also to fight ISIS, there's a lot of highly trained groups and fairly well-armed groups within Iraq who now have full authority to, turn on the Americans, God willing.
And so if my point just wasn't clear, what I'm saying is, like, Sistani is a real Marja. Of course, Khamenei was, but it gets a little messy because of this very modern interpretation of what is incumbent on Shia Muslims. And so therefore he's as pure, if you will, as you can get of a Marja, because anybody who, if you will, it has taken on Sistani as their Marja Taqlid, it's because it's in their heart. It's not even because, well, it's a political thing and he's got the position and he's the leader. So no, it's because he's their Marja Taqlid. And so everything is just what that you're saying, I think is just critically important in this context.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just following up on what Indi just mentioned, it is pretty significant also that this is a moment where, given what happened about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, with the U.S. brokered, Jolani and Rojava kind of, Kurdish groups agreement, that they released thousands of ISIS, fighters who may be deployed by the, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Zionist empire. It's got its collaborators across, these different communities and traditions, either in Lebanon at some point, or through Iraq, against Iraqi resistance there. So this is quite a kind of significant that the Iraqi based Marja Taqlid is saying this, but also that so is the Grand Mufti of Sunni Muslims in Iraq, Sheikh Mahdi al-Sumaydai, who is saying that, gave a kind of video here where he mentioned that it was again a religious obligation for Sunni Muslims to defend any country that was upholding the banner of Islam against invasion, occupation, and its enemies, that it was incumbent to support them. And so this is, I think, an extremely important statement. Finally, we're starting to see Sunni Muslim authorities
MashaAllah.
wake up to the danger and join their Shi'i brothers, abandon sectarianism, and recognize that despite any theological and devotional differences and even interpretation of early Muslim history, that has to be sidelined in unity. For the Ummah to survive, we are facing a very serious global kind of question here. And it was so wonderful to see a Sunni cleric, a Sunni scholar, I should say, like this, making very clear statement. I mean, I listened to it in Arabic, and he said that it is an absolute obligation, even if you fight to the death, you must defend. And he mentioned Iran. You have to defend Iran. So this is very, very significant. I don't know why it took 2.5 years of genocide. Before these statements, came up. Of course, they condemned Israeli aggression, but I remember only one, and I can't remember if it was an Algerian sheikh or it was somebody, but it was somebody outside of kind of the exact context of the Levant and the central parts of the Middle East, basically between the Nile and the Euphrates region of the Arab Middle East. It wasn't from there, it was from somewhere else, where a Sunni scholar during the course of the genocide said that it is an obligation to wage resistance, jihad against the oppressors. Everybody else under the thumb of these corrupt governments that are vassal states of the US, all the Gulfies, Egypt, Jordan, everywhere in the Sunni Muslim world, really in central kind of Middle East lands, where they have been, recruited into and subordinated to the Epstein Empire, would not give a kind of authorization that Muslims could go and fight with their brothers and sisters in Palestine. So this is really pretty important, it seems to me, and it shows how significant the awareness is, and also how much, even though there's been a lot of propaganda about, look, Iran attacked his fellow brother Muslim countries in the Gulf and so on, that is not flying with people, because they get and understand the fact that these are places that are subordinate, they're colonies, they're neo-colonies essentially, and that they are collaborating with the United States and Israel in this attack and in this war on Iran. So I think this is a very healthy development to wake up the solidarity of the people. Were in solidarity, but the authorities, the people who speak on behalf of them, actually coming out and putting, hopefully, an end to the sectarianism that has been so useful for the empire to exploit in dividing Muslims. So at any rate, that seemed worth.
I'd like to,
yeah, come on in.
Yeah, sorry, I'd like to add one thing. It's going to go in 5 minutes. I think it's important to understand that what we're witnessing in Iran is democracy. I think for a long time, there's something that I call democracy TM, where the Western world has taken one form of democracy, which Aristotle said trends towards oligarchy, taken that form and said, this is democracy. But if you go back and read Aristotle's On Politics, I'll quote from him a bit, he said, there are very many species of democracies as well as of other states. And he said, we will first consider what particular sort of democracy is fitted to a particular city, and also what particular oligarchy to a particular people. And of other states, what is advantageous to what. So in that book, he's kind of doing a survey around the Mediterranean city-states. And there's many different types of democracies based on the sort of priorities of those people. He said to some people, they have an aristocracy that's important for them to preserve. For some people, they have like a merchant class that's important. Or there's different flavor, and it's democracy is supposed to adapt to the people. So if you look at what's happening in Iran, that is a democracy which is adapted to its people. And Westerners call it a theocracy, but I think we need to stop accepting their words on everything, given their deeds so far. And if you look at even the founding of America, at the beginning, it was, I think, maybe less than 10% of the population could vote. And the people that could select the president at the time were propertied, like landowning, slave-owning males, because that's what was important to them and what's still important to them. But in a culture where someone's kitchen noises in there, but like in a country where, or in a culture where faith is important to people, it makes sense that their democracy, and you can absolutely call it that. You can call that a democracy. You can call China a democracy. And democracy is really based on how do people feel about it. It's not based on like what the worst people on earth have branded something. And if you look at every night in Iran, there are people in the streets protesting for their government. They're protesting for their government. And you have to like take their word on what's good for them. And I think what we're witnessing is, and also this idea that this is bad because he's the son of someone. Like in I don't know Iranian culture that well, but in Sri Lankan culture, you are the son of someone. Like you are part of a family. That's not a negative thing. You shouldn't appoint your son if they're an idiot, or the other people shouldn't select their son if they're an idiot, which the Americans have done with Bush II. Your son still has to be like qualified, but it's not like something you have to overcome. It's a positive that he learned at the feet of his father, and it's good that he like attained the respect of his peers. And that's not something you need to like apologize for or say it's like nepotism or whatever. That's where, again, we're taking definitions from the worst hypocrites on earth.
It is, Indi, just as you were speaking, I'm just thinking about just the absurdity of people in the United States or in Europe criticizing the Iranian government on a basis of lack of democracy. Europe is being basically deindustrialized and economically ruined by a cabal in Brussels, essentially unelected by the people. Look at the shit show that our political system has become, arguably over, especially the last 35 years, but we could go way back. And the idea that the hubris, the estekbar, if you will, the arrogance of the political class, we won't call them elites, the pedo class in the West, criticizing the Islamic Republic of Iran or the People's Republic of China. It's so heartening to see. And admittedly, I'm sure my algorithm misleads me, but the number of the amount of interest and the number of, if you will, likes for things that 2 years ago could not have been probably voiced without somebody getting fired. It's truly stunning. And so, courage is contagious in all contexts. And so I think that, and there's a lot of canaries in our national coal mine to observe. And so, I just wanted to kind of pile on with Indi there, but thanks, Indi, for that.
And the coal mine thing,
that's great.
No, and the coal mine thing is a good point, because people forget the EU is a coal and steel cartel. It was founded as a coal and steel cartel. It's not like a democratic institution.
That's true. That's true.
Gives new meaning to canon remission, right? If I may say.
Any final
there, man. Seriously,
before you have to go?
My final thoughts are, if you want to follow what's going on, I would recommend reading the Quran. It's the most up-to-date sort of thing going on. I'm a Buddhist, so read the Dhamma also. The Dhamma has like changed my life. But if you want to understand world affairs, the Quran has got it. And just in general, like, trust the people who are doing stuff. Some people respond to me and say, "Oh, like, I'm so scared. I'm like losing faith." I'm like, bro, you're not doing anything. Like, if the people who are doing something are not scared, then like, how can you be scared? Like, we're all following the resistance right now. And I invite you to read them. I invite you to read direct sources. You've got to get off the mainstream media. That doesn't mean you need to go down a Facebook rabbit hole. There's a lot of good books. There's a lot of good teachers. Things are translated. So I invite you to read. And if you want to understand the resistance, what's happening now, I do think you need to, I guess it's weird that I keep going over this, but you've got to read the Quran. At least read the first 2 books.
May I just say on this subject, I just did an interview this afternoon with Mujamma Harakat, who is
I was just going to recommend his
scholar, and is doing the God's work by translating into English many of the most essential texts of the Palestinian Islamic resistance. And let's not forget, our brothers and sisters in Palestine did start this flood. Speaking of which, they are, living in horrendous conditions, and it behooves us to support them materially. And if you can give anything to the Samia Project, Ramadan Appeal, which these things are also done to motivate you to support, because we need to help the beautiful people of Palestine to survive on their land, resist on their land, and existence is resistance, and you can support them by giving like our friend, and one of this week's gifts was our first conversation with Justin Potter. As he says, give until it hurts. Don't make your life unlivable for it, but give until it hurts.
And I've been hitting up my family on that account. Like check out your mothers and mothers-in-law. They will like still give you money. You should do that.
Yes.
But you guys will have to excuse me. I got to go drop off.
Yes, thank you so much,
Thank you,
Indi.
brother.
Thank you.
Well, everyone go check out Indi.ca, read his blog posts, follow him on Twitter at Indi.ca, and pleasure and an honor.
And I
For
appreciate that, but
weapons
also,
grade shit posting, following on Twitter.
but I do recommend if you read one thing which Benji keeps harking back to, Martyr Basil al-Araj's 7 points. That will tell you like what you specifically need to do right now. I sort of collected that and a bunch of stuff. There's like a book on my site called Reading Resistance, which is just a collection of all those things. But wherever you find it, just read what Martyr Basil al-Araj said and follow that.
Thank you so much. And I do want to redouble and thank Benji for reminding us that this is a Samir Project fundraiser for their Ramadan campaign. I posted at the very top of the chat and have put in the link a few times, but I neglected to really emphasize it at the beginning. I really would love it if 10 people from this audience, wherever you're watching, whether it's on X or Substack or YouTube, would join me in making a donation. If 10 people could join me from this is a big group, actually. It's wonderful. These have been really bringing together and expanding the community. There's plenty of people. The least you can do is like the stream, share it on your social media. But if you can take an extra step, I would really like it if you would join me in making a donation to the Ramadan campaign. That it's in the chat right now. They're at £265,370, and they want to make it to 500,000, £500,000. You can give in any denomination, but if you could give something like $25 that would be a great step. You're welcome, of course, to give more. You can give any time, but how about doing it during this time? And if you do happen to do it, please post in the chat, not because you're bragging or anything. And I know many people have given in the past. Not everyone can give, but just to encourage and say, yes, we are doing our part for whatever we can, even if it hurts, as Benji says, a little bit, or as Justin has said, even if it hurts, until it hurts, just at that threshold, okay? Yeah. It's very important. Okay, but I wanted to come to this because this came up on the topic we were just discussing in the chat. Outside looking in, non-Muslim here, does the global ummah even exist? The genocide in Gaza wasn't a uniting factor. Why would Iran be?
May I try
also,
to
another from my, a commenter here about my I think my citation of the Grand Mufti of Sunnis in Iraq said, well, it's not as significant as one may think. Muftis may provide religious reaffirmation, but we already knew that. Yes, I agree. They don't have the same kind of authority that, for example, a marja has in Shi'i Islam, where it's taken as a very serious and authoritative statement. If you get a fatwa or a juridical opinion from a Sunni religious scholar, there are many other scholars, and you could listen to them, and they differ, and they have lots of different kinds of views and things, and it's up to that individual. It's a little less structured and rigorous in terms of, the judicial opinion. However, if it wasn't significant, why did no one do it before? Why are they only doing it now? It's not about the opinion of this particular scholar, although, of course, they are in a prominent position in a frontline state in this, war. So that all does seem sort of significant. But what is significant is as a possible turning point, as a way of showing that perhaps the religious mood and attitude is changing, because we have not seen this before, to the detriment that has allowed the genocide to continue, has allowed, it to be expanded into Lebanon, to attack Ansarullah in Yemen, and now to make destructive, terrible war on Iran. And we haven't even talked about how these horrible, Epstein Empire has, done chemical warfare, essentially, by destroying, all of these oil storage tanks and refineries that have put such a disgusting, toxic black cloud that is coming down as black toxic acid rain. Who knows how many cancers, how many, emphysemas and other kinds of diseases are going to rob the Iranian people of
The
their
most vulnerable of them, the
just
children, the sick, and the elderly.
and the elder. That's exactly what happens, and that is what that targets, and we condemn that, and we'll talk maybe a little bit more about that at some point here. But to my mind, it's not about the authority of the individual and the kind of ontological status of a scholar's opinion. It's about, in the context and in the matrix of resistance, are people being activated to overcome the sectarian divisions and actually have sympathy and actually have solidarity with their brothers and sisters who are fighting for their lives and for this ummah. Okay, finally somebody stood up in a public way, and I hope there will be many, many more that will do so. So if it's not as significant right now, let's make it significant by continuing to demand and ask and request that our leaders, the people who have been appointed or are appointed as our religious authorities, if you have a mosque, you're part of a mosque community in the Imperial Core, and your board and your imam at that mosque has not said something recently about the genocide in Gaza and is not saying something now about solidarity with the people of Iran, then you need to put pressure on them and say, we want better from you, because we don't want to be divided. We want to resist, and we want to be in sympathy and solidarity and make this ummah actually mean something. So getting back to that point that Kimi said, outside looking in, does it even exist? I wanted to throw that out to you guys. This is a real question that Muslims are and have been asking ourselves. The Palestinians have been asking. Sometimes they said, Wain al-Arab, where are the Arabs? But you know what they were saying most during this last 2.5 years of genocide? Where are the Muslims? Where is the Ummah? So when somebody else outside can say, as a non-Muslim, yeah, do you guys have any? What's your global Ummah if you were just letting genocide? But why might Iran be a uniting factor? Obviously, the Muslim people felt 99% of them felt in sympathy and solidarity with the Palestinian people. Many of them, however, were not in positions where they could do much in the repressive vassal states that don't have sovereignty, that are part of the U.S. empire. But
so let me
what about Iran, and what's changing or changed maybe?
Let me try to fill this. Before we do that, I just want to thank from the bottom of my heart Asia Miana 42 for donating. She says, also love you all so much, comrades. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for this thing you did. You have no idea how important your donation is, really. Another, Tarad Allison donated $33 to the Samis Project Ramadan campaign, love and solidarity. Thank you so much, sister. Casserole Girl donated, thank you so much, sister. F. Darren donated, thank you so much, brother. If I misgender you, please forgive me, brothers and sisters. Keep on donating, keep on telling us, because it does make a difference. It warms the heart, but the hearts it warms most are the hearts of our brothers and sisters in Gaza. Now, I want to fill this question from my perspective as a kind of a Marxist psychologist. And Marx said, theory becomes a material force when it is seized by the masses. And this concept of Ummah is very nice on paper, but if people don't see a way, a life in which there is a possible alternative, then it's not going to make you act. And it's the same for the socialist movement, the Communist International, or whatever. To be a material force, individuals, groups, communities need to be able to live inside what I call a system of meaning that says it's possible to live inside of this and to act from this. And since the fall of the Soviet Union, the idea of any alternative to that beast capitalism, imperialism, had been briefly wiped out from the face of our collective and individual systems of meaning, identities. So inside of this, what would have been the point to do anything about it? And the only communities that managed to hang on to the sense of an alternative were those that weren't connected to the alternative in this here mortal world, but that somehow managed to connect to life beyond life as a way to ground into the possibility of life fighting this death machine, also known as capitalism or imperialism. And what those folks did, and this is what I want to talk most about today, is they devised, I think the Palestinians have been groping at it since 1936, if not earlier. And the Iranians had also been groping at it since 1953, but let's say after the success of the revolution in 79, probably from the moment Saddam, egged on by the imperialists, invaded Iran, they knew this was existential. And this is where the concept of strategic patience came from, right? Strategic means basically strategy is where you want to get to. And where you want to get to is a world in which life can live without being extinguished by this crazy, corrupt and corrupting and life extinguishing artificial non-intelligence, also known as capitalism, right? And so they've been studying, and you see today, they tell you, they said, we've been studying the wars over the past 30 years, all the mistakes made, all the lessons learned. We do this all the time. They've been educating their population like crazy. 60% of the engineers for the missiles, nobody, the world's never seen, are women. You understand what it means in a country where in 79, I don't know, David, you can say, but the number of women that even were literate was vanishingly small in a very small class that had no purchase on the people. And the strategy has been to liberate Palestine, to go all the way to al-Quds, to Al-Aqsa, because it's the only way to live. This imperial, it's like this viral infection, it never stops. And I'm gonna tell you, the Zionist colony is just the same as the US. The US has been around for 250 years, and it's been at peace for 3 of those years. This is a war genocidal machine, and all its wars have been genocidal, including its own civil war. They've been genocidal to one another. And the Zionist colony is exactly the same. It's not like worse because it's Jewish supremacy and the others are just, I don't know, WASP supremacy, and then the others were Cod Aryan supremacy, and the Pahlavists are another form of Cod Aryan supremacy. It doesn't matter what it is. It's this Cod ideologies, this Cod eschatologies that are perfect for this thing that is here to frack everything, frack nature, frack your communities, frack your mind, frack your mental health, frack everything that you hold dear and that we need to be alive in this world. So they went for this strategic patience, and they are masters of psychological war. Bassel al-Araj said it, and Nasrallah also said it, and they kept on thinking, how does this psychopathic frog think? And the world changed with the atomic bomb. It changed that you couldn't do revolution anymore by telling them in advance, we'll go all the way to Berlin. When the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union in June 41, Operation Barbarossa, Stalin made a speech and he said, these are our war goals. We are going to destroy the Nazi machine and this will finish in Berlin. And he did not change his war goals until he got there. Iran can't do this, because if Iran said the end goal now is to destroy them, you are talking about not just you want to boil a frog that is armed with nuclear weapons, and you don't want it to actually start Armageddon, because we are the side of life, so we're here to preserve life. So it's a very subtle game you have to play. It's much more Sun Tzu, by the way, than Clausewitz, because Clausewitz thought war had its own madness and had its own autonomy, and you could just, had to be absolutely savage in war, whereas Sun Tzu is, no, it's all just a global thing. It's all kind of politics, and you always have to leave an out to your enemies. And this is what's happening today. So I'm calling it to you, and I'm seeing a lot of my friends going, no, you don't have to, you shouldn't be too optimistic. It's very difficult. The empire is still very strong and all the rest of it. This is true. But in moments of revolution, you have a dialectical change of things into their opposite. You've already seen those places where the guarantee of security is now the guarantee of insecurity. The morality was on the West, and we saw, people, and I also did that, I apologize, I'm sorry, saw people in Iran like medieval, people who had no idea that the world had moved since 700 years or whatever, and now you see it's exactly the opposite that's happening. You have even the Zionists and the Christian Zionists calling on, mostly apocryphal books of the Bible with stories like the 70,000 Persians dead in Purim 2,500 years ago. Or if it was an historical fact, it would be recorded not just in that, crazy genocidal books. And the people who are really up with it are the people of Iran, are the engineers, And so it is a long game. And in this long game, they are going, I think what Bezeskian did was not actually a mistake. It's letting every rat leave the Titanic if they want to, because we're only interested in the captain at the end of the day. We want the captain down, and we want this ship down because the world needs to survive. And it's going down, and as it goes down, you want all its past servants, all its small demons to have a way out, come back into humanity. Don't go down with that ship. And this is exactly what is going on. But this thing can stop in only two places: Tehran or Al-Aqsa. And it is going to stop in Al-Aqsa. Even today, the Zionists are starting to complain that if they want to face Hezbollah at the border, they need to divert resources from Iran. But of course, now with the selection of Muqtada Khamenei, they will divert even more resources on their crazy schemes. A pager, no, maybe not a pager, maybe a toothbrush. A toothbrush, why not? Well, it doesn't smoke cigars like Castro, so we can't have the exploding cigar. This is what they did to Castro, and they do this all the time, and they think they're so smart. But they're absolute idiots, I tell you. They plan this war, and they're lazy idiots. They plan their targets for this war in a weekend with AI. Like, this is your F student, who's been on the binge of whatever intoxicants and corrupt practices for the whole week, and on the Sunday night, asks ChatGPT to write his essay. This is literally what these people are doing, because they are so supremacists that they cannot imagine that other people are working and they want to live, and they've thought about this for so long. And the resistance is so brilliant. It's rope-a-dope all the way, right?
Yes.
But they never lie. In a people's war, the people's army cannot afford to lie, because if you lie, you lose the trust of the people. And without the trust of the people, you lose the water that sustains you, because you don't have, billionaires that give you money. On the other side, colonists, imperialists must lie. They can never tell the truth, because if they told the truth, they would lose the support even of their home base. So this is always how psychological war works in a people's war, right? Because the people always say stupidly, in war, the first casualty is truth. In a war between nations, yes, but in a people's war, not on the people's side. So if you want to, and this is why Basil said, don't ever push, reproduce enemy information, because these people always lie, as I was saying earlier. Even when they say the truth, it's to lie to you. So we know this, and they told us everything. When Hezbollah signed the ceasefire, they said, we are not defeated, we have still most of our powder dry. And many of us, and maybe I believe this a little bit as well because, you know, I'm a white supremacy intoxicated Westerner like many of us, that this was a lie. They had been defeated and they were just, you know, going back home with their tail, the tail between their legs. And I want to share something personal. David and I had this little spat. You know, I look at sources of information and I go, how does that make me feel? Does that make me feel like resistance is fertile or futile? And I've been watching the Cradle very closely. They seem to have really good inside information, but lately, like since the ceasefire, I noticed they were always criticizing the Hizb, right? Always criticizing Hezbollah. They ceasefire at the wrong time, they do this wrong, they do this badly, they do this, they're stupid, they're weak, they made so many mistakes. And I was starting to think, is this an op? Like every time I watch these guys, I walk away thinking, why are they saying that the resistance is so bad? Even when they started fighting again, the resistance, they started saying, no, this is the wrong time, in the wrong way, wrong place, wrong everything. And suddenly I realized Hezbollah says the truth. They can't lie because that's what they have to do. So they said, no, we have our strength. We will fight if necessary. Don't worry. We will be there when the time comes. But people like the Cradle were pushing out the other thing, not because they were anti-Hezbollah, but because they were, hey, let's make them believe that we're on the rope. Let's, you know, they must know that we are close to Hezbollah. So if we start criticizing them all the time, then they'll start thinking, oh, they must be really weak and lying, because liars can't imagine other people tell the truth, you know. And it's brilliant. And the same, this concept of strategic patience, many of us, and sometimes I confess I thought that way. Imagine it was just an excuse for not fighting, right? With Iran, you can't talk about strategic patience, but it just, you know, just because you're too, whatever, to fight. But it wasn't that. Strategic patience means you wait until you have a good chance of attaining your goal. And the good chance is you let this empire come to a point of weakness. That means your blow is going to. And the price is, you know, the price is 700,000 martyrs in Gaza. All of the place turned to rubble. The price is atrocious, but still, if you're on the side of life, you're willing to pay that price. And this is exactly what's happened. And now the final battle has been joined. And whatever you hear, whenever you see, you know, you will see Iran say, we are willing to negotiate. You will see, of course, the Chinese say, we always think people should stop fighting yesterday and people should come to the table and talk. This is the only way to solve problems. And at the same time, if you listen to the Chinese well, they'll say, but we totally support the legitimate right of the Iranian people to defend themselves according to international law and all the rest of it. So what they are doing strategically is they're leaving a way out. They're leaving a way out for the rats to leave the Titanic so that the thing goes down and they don't work to, stop the holes so that it keeps on floating. This is exactly what's happening. Trust the process. These people have been for 40 years thinking about it. They are smart as a whip. Like they're all philosopher kings. The Larijani, who actually runs the war, in my understanding, has written 3 books on Kant, on the philosophy of mathematics in Kant, right? These people are professional philosophers. They think things, and they're engineers, and they are military specialists, and they are. Wasn't diplomacy invented in Persia? It probably was. And so they know exactly what they are doing and realize that what feels like, they may be, coming down again, will not happen. Why not? Because they know that this monster will never let them go. And now they've managed to mobilize more people in Iran than even were mobilized for the biggest ever popular revolution in 1979. So they have this moment. They need to use it. Like, it would be crazy. The population would understand it if they signed another ceasefire with people. They're not just non-agreement capable, they're non-negotiations capable. So it's costless. They can say, yes, we're willing to negotiate all the time. On the other side, Trump will say, total capitulation. He will tweet like today that he won every day. And as the core public sees this, nonsense, they'll start seeing that they are led by not even donkeys, by people who have taken leave of all their senses, and the whole thing will crumble. So I'm calling it. It's in al-Quds. Sheikh Yassin was right. 2027 is the latest time the entity will come down. And by the way, Laith Maroof, also you said it, brother, you were right, and you are very often right. And the other thing that I believe we will see is the empire will go down with it. So that is what I wanted to say for today. I'll make some longer videos about all the ideas behind this, but you know, take heart, the free people of the world on the march, and the demons, I call them cod satanists, because they don't put their heart into anything at all. You know why? Not even in their satanistic rituals, because they don't have a heart.
I'd like to, before Adnan, you jump back in and put anything else up on the board related to your excellent points about the Ummah and your drawing attention to the Ummah. I need to make an important public service announcement about the Ummah to any Muslims who might be watching or who might watch this in the future. And this is coming from an Armenian, Iranian, like secular sort of agnostic guy who has studied Islamic history for decades. And so I need to, I think, make some important points here about the Ummah, agency, and resistance. Historically, the Ummah has only existed since the period of the Rashidun caliphs, and that would be since 661 of the Common Era, through action by Muslims that transcends the sectarian divisions that the civil wars that rent the Ummah into multiple constituent parts created. So this term after 661 is about as useful as the term Christendom. You know, all the Christians. So for those who don't know what we're talking about, the Ummah refers to all Muslims on the planet of any sectarian denomination. People will question, well, are Druze or Alawites, but certainly Sunnis who are non-Shiites, basically, that's all that really refers to. And the Shiites have this concept of the Ummah. I think many people who are raised in Muslim societies, houses, traditions, they have, I think, perhaps a mistaken understanding. There's this thing out there and it's the Ummah and like we're all a part of it. It only exists as far as you are willing to participate in it and to transcend your sectarian boundaries to act in the interest of the global Islamic community. And so let me draw an example from Burning Man. Anytime anybody was at Burning Man talking shit and complaining about something, the answer, well, first you'd realize this was their first time, but second, you would ask them, what are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? Is traffic is stuck at the gate? Why are you complaining? Why aren't you going and doing something about it? And so I think that this is a critically important lesson for the Ummah. If you're waiting for where the Ummah is and you're a Muslim, where are you? And where is your community? Because I saw the most disgusting sectarianism from students, from colleagues of mine, people who I still deal with and respect during the Syrian dirty war. Their interest in overthrowing the legitimate Syrian government was so much greater than their interest, it seemed, in Palestine. In truth, in reality, they just became CIA tools, and the sectarianism was disgusting. I had to distance myself from some of these people because it was like clearly they were acting as tools of Zionism and the CIA, thinking they were doing it, I don't know, for the Ummah. They were doing it for basically Takfiri Salafist assholes like the Trump appointed president of Syria right now. And so I just think it's critically important here. If you know, I hate to burst people's bubbles about the Ummah, but the Ummah is you if you're a Muslim. And what are you going to do about it? How are you going to take action in your community to transcend sectarian boundaries? Quit talking shit about Shiites. Quit using slurs and all kinds of language to criticize them. I've seen it and it's disgusting. And I've seen it from people who, again, I love some of these people and I respect them, and they will repost some sick garbage about Shiites because they think they know some shit. So the Ummah exists as far as you're willing to look in the mirror as a Muslim and transcend your own sectarian boundaries and act in the interest of the global Muslim community, which at bare root is opposing Zionism and American imperialism. And for those who sold out and supported the overthrow of the Syrian government, thank you. You made it that much more difficult for Iran to get the job done. You made it that much easier for Zionists to kill Iranians as they're getting the job done. So look in the mirror and think about what the Ummah means to you and what Islam means to you. And in that, you might find the path to action and resistance.
I love it, Dave. This is so important. The whole Syria game, that was played to fracture the movement needs to be called out. If anybody is still thinking that there was anything good to come out of the so-called Syrian revolution, which is, I say so-called because it wasn't really Syrian. It was like, all these outside powers and, jihadi takfiris gathered from all over, the world. So-called Syrian, so-called revolution. It wasn't a revolution. It was a counter-revolution. It was the enemy of resistance. And now it should be very clear to people now. I don't really have any more patience for this sectarianism, that so many people claim to be pro-Palestine, but then they demand to, be in solidarity with the Syrian people against their government or the Iranian people against their government. Without
idiots, sorry, just what part of history did you forget? God, I'm sorry to interject, man. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, please. Yeah.
Just disgusting. So here we are. So by the way, though, I've seen from many of these people now sort of sheepish respect for Shiism and for Khamenei and have you guys seen, actually, I think I should get this one out. There's a great graphic. It's the apology form to Sayyid Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Have you seen the apology form?
No.
It says, I apologize to Sayyid Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and I was wrong. And then it's got a checkbox of reasons why, like I drank the Zionist Kool-Aid. I watched American mainstream media. I'm not actually a real Muslim. Like I'm an American Zionist Muslim, the Zionist and American form of Islam. It's got a checkbox, and then you sign it and you can submit it online to Khamenei IR. And apparently they're backlogged, but they'll send you forgiveness.
There's a question in the chat. I listen to all your tanky shows religiously, but you never talk about the authoritarian methods of, whatever. I have a very simple point to make about this. One is, this is an internal matter for the country, especially I'm talking as a white person. We don't get to speak about how people organize their own societies because for 500 years we have been a bunch of depraved, demonic genociders, rapists, Epstein Island installers and all the rest of it. So, a little bit of humility, fellow white peoples, right? That's number one. And number two, I had this fascinating conversation with Joseph Mahoney on China recently. You can see it on our Substack. And he said, Chinese people, it's in their tradition, the death penalty. I'm totally against it. I've been all my life. He said, it's so deep in the tradition for thousands of years. And the Communist Party has been trying like crazy to reduce the use of the death penalty. But when they do this, the population won't let them. Really, if there is one thing that gets the Chinese population up in arms, it's not putting to death those people that, according to their thousands of years of tradition, should be physically eliminated. And I mentioned this to my Mandarin teacher, who has nothing to do with politics, and he says, yes, that's absolutely true. You cannot take this away from the Chinese people. So if I were, authoritarianism is not always what we think it is. That would be my other comment on this question.
And can I just add, and not to rip on the person in that question, but those that ask those questions, could you also, look in the mirror or take some binoculars and look out across the landscape of the United States with its prison industrial complex, with its now Gestapo in the streets, like masked feds, with the way that empire is rebounding 24/7 on us through surveillance, through the crushing of First Amendment, Fourth Amendment rights. I mean, seriously, it is really frogs boiling in a pot here. Americans, our country is turning to liquid shit before our eyes, and Americans are still looking out there going, oh, I see some authoritarianism out there. I think I see some Trump likes authoritarians. It's just, my God, like, people, I don't know, like, when the boot finally kicks in your fucking door, you might finally wake up and understand what's actually going on.
Somebody quoted Andrew Jackson, who said on Twitter yesterday, "I'm not against the Cherokee, just their leadership."
Hell yeah.
Sinner, brother.
We have a special guest.
Yes.
I'm hoping maybe there's
Hello.
one rant.
Hello.
You know, the people demand a rant. But anyway, Sina, it's great to have you.
Hello.
Maybe you've been watching the news and you can update us, because
I only
What happened
did
in
this
the last hour?
So maybe
That's how long it took Sinner to get his hair in
well,
place.
I think there was a huge. Oh God. Oh, sorry. There's like 15 things happening. There's a lot happening. There was another huge attack. I think it was like the 30th wave of Operation True Promise 4. And it's sorry, yeah, I'm just kind of getting started. What you guys been talking about? The war? Yeah, I think I just posted an episode that we did on Monday, right? What was it, Monday or Tuesday? I have no sense of time, with Jay and Lara. You and I did, Adnan, and I realized that like the 4 days or like 4 or 5 days that have gone since then, maybe more. It was maybe Wednesday or something. I don't remember now, but the war has accelerated at such an extreme pace, and the amount of violence being dished out to this region is really quite shocking. I mean, we've normalized this violence in our lives through this entity because it's just like normal, and partly it's because they have this media power that can just make things normal. Like they can make abnormal things normal and make normal things abnormal. And it's like this remarkable ability to just kind of ignore this incredible genocidal violence that's been extending outward and outwards. But I guess at the overall thing, I will say that the Americanization of this war I think was always going to be the sort of it was always going to happen if it came this far, unless, I mean, because I was trying to think about it today. What if the Israelis had just stopped? What if they stopped in like, I don't know, like maybe 6 months ago? What if they said, okay, fine. Like theoretically, we wouldn't be here, right? Theoretically, we wouldn't be here. But because they've decided that it's like, we're going to go for all the marbles, and they've now found themselves in this weird position of opening themselves up to a kind of attack that is both directly at them that they haven't experienced. Like the scale of the violence against them is something they've never experienced, and it's not just like the bombs dropping. I mean, the bombs are dropping, and more drop tonight, and we aren't seeing the footage because they hide it, because for national security reasons they hide it too. From their own people and from the outside world, for good reasons. If you're like thinking from their perspective, yeah, for good reasons. What would be the point of letting these videos come out? You live in like a society built on censorship. It's not hard to censor stuff to like not get it go out or keep it. Now, mind you, I don't know how it actually works, because a lot of Israelis have like Westoid relatives and they share stuff. So stuff probably trickles out. And there's also, the indigenous population too, who are filming this stuff, who can get it out. So it's weird. The Israelis can't do the thing that's happening in Iran, which is internet shutoffs. Like if you shut off the internet in Israel, they would die. That's not, you can't do that to a Westoid. That's like,
They would live the next day.
I live in this town. I live in a small town. Sorry?
They would live the next day.
There might be a delay.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. But like, it's more, I live in this town and I always kind of joke with myself, like what would happen if my town had like an Islamic revolution? Like they would close all the LCBOs and liquor stores and people would die. Like literally people would die of like alcohol withdrawal. Like what would that like it was like, and I was like, yeah, that the Islamic Revolution probably wouldn't work here. Probably wouldn't get very far. But like that's the thing, like that taking internet away, taking Westoid life away from Israelis is way more powerful than destroying a fucking Merkava. A Merkava you can rebuild. A Merkava is like a Merkava you can fix. You can, you know, you who cares? You can just print money if you're them. Now, mind you, that's come to an end too, and we should probably get to that because there's a lot of financial news that has been happening since you guys started recording. The Nikkei is down 7% as of an hour ago. Same thing with the Korean stock market. I can't remember what it's called, but I think that part of what we need to understand from the perspective of the resistance of like how to hit these people, it's how to hit them at a societal level, is that it's that the way they hit us, for instance, flying to the borders of Iraq and then firing these like advanced low radar signature standoff munitions, right, that are extremely powerful, extremely fast, basically like impossible to stop. Like those are responded to by Iranian missiles fired from the home, the western, and landing somewhere, and some being intercepted, but most now it looks like aren't. Like I saw some videos tonight where they were just breezing past it. So it's interesting. This is getting truly out of hand for the imperialists. In all of this, I will say, like, they have a lot more to lose. I know that sounds really callous, given the fact that we have like 90 million people. It's just in Iran alone. Forget the wider region. But it's more in the sense that their sensitive spots are so sensitive that to see them go, to see that go is not something that they can sustain. Like the losses in the Gulf, not just the military losses, but like the financial losses, because like the whole thing relies, like the whole money laundering machine needs peace. It needs stability. And it turns out Iran is the one guaranteeing that stability. Like I tweeted this earlier today, if American power is unable to stop Iran from inflicting damage to the Gulf, say, infrastructure, which is not what they've been doing. They've been hitting American targets there. It was the Israelis who started this kind of infrastructure war when they did a crazy genocidal rant. I just heard the word rant. A genocidal attack on Iran's fuel storage in the city in Tehran, which is insanely violent images coming out of that yesterday that just like haunted me all day. But these are punishment. That's basically what this is. This is punishment for not caving. So as the response to Iranians basically dismantling this like 30-year-long military buildup, along with kind of defrocking Zionist security doctrine or sort of security stability sort of projection. That's not a word, but you know what I mean? Like their ability to project this kind of safe home front that, oh, this is the safest place for Jews. It's objectively the most dangerous place for Jews right now, because you can't just make the missiles stop, and you simply can't make Iran go away. You can't make Iran open the Hormuz Strait. I think the funniest thing, yeah, those images are terrible. They're really bad. This is what happens when you have no red lines. I mean, this is what we're talking about. They have been doing a psyop today of, oh, the Americans didn't want this, the Israelis did this was a surprise, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't buy it. This is all the same game. But this is what happens when you have no red lines. They do this. This is when you have no morals. And remember, even scarier, they want Gaza. They want Gaza. They want the land of Gaza. They don't want the land of Iran. They don't care if it's ruined, right? This is what makes them so traumatizing. And what's extra fucked, is that if you scrolled on All American, like I was on Reddit today, it was all just like trophies of look at Iran this morning, look at Iran. Like this is the level of sociopathy, right?
Well,
we went from like protect Iranians, protesters, their precious lives, to let's blacken the sky. I mean, this is so all of this is to say is that the escalation itself went from the plans of, okay, we're going to start a currency crisis and then it will lead to wider street unrest, which we will then exploit to plant whatever to initiate a coup. That coup failed. Iranian, it really hasn't, the story of what happened in those 2 days in January hasn't really been exposed. I don't exactly know when, but at some point, Zarif and Rouhani were taken into some kind of arrest. They have not been heard from. And the fact that they haven't been heard from during all of this means tell you that like the strike, that it's real, that this news of them being arrested. So all of this is to say is that we are here because those earlier plans didn't work out. Like we're at plan C now, I think, of just like, okay, kill them all, like exterminate the brutes. Like this is exterminate the brutes mode. But unfortunately for them, the brutes in question have the ability to inflict immense amount of damage to their imperial. So this is an inflection point in history we've never seen. I mean, I'm not going to be the Iranian guy who's like, we are unique in world history, but we are unique in world history in this instance because they've never. This is not something any of us we foresaw it. I mean, I definitely knew that Iran could like stomp on the nuts of the American military buildup. I knew that. If I knew that, then people who actually know this stuff in fucking Langley and Virginia, whatever the Pentagon shit, they knew that too. And yet here we are. So either they want it to go to some kind of deeper escalation, which is to say nuclear, right? And so they took us here. So they're like, okay, we're going to go because the hope is Iran is decimated and they can have all of the Gulf and Iran, which I don't think is really possible. But like these are their fever dreams. But like this stage we're at is like they either want it to go all the way or they had no plans to see it go this far and they're making it up. So it's like I feel like I'm in one of these two modes, that it's either A or B, that like this has gotten them, and maybe like B leads them back to A, which is to say getting this deep unplanned is going to be like, okay, well, we're this far, let's just go all the way, bro. Like YOLO, we're dealing with sociopaths after all, like maniacal, psycho, Hitlerite, declining sociopaths. So I don't know. This is we're gonna get some financial shock this morning. I was informed that I was talking with my mom. My mom was like, "Yeah, I lost 10,000 on my retirement this last week." Like that's like my mom. Imagine what it's like for like millionaires and billionaires and this is their base ultimately, right? Like stock portfolio, like they hit us to the things we value, right? Like people, school, our infrastructure. We hit them in the only thing they value, which is their money, which is their fucking Scrooge McDuck money pit of like fake digital coins. That this is the only thing that they worship. This is the only thing that they have. So Iran's strategy is certainly working. And the question is like, what evil things like this is? They're in the like, let's turn it up to 11 mode, and the scale of evil. And this is where we're at. Like, who knows? Who knows? So yeah. Also, again,
Well,
my new space to record in. Isn't it nice?
Beautiful.
yeah, it's I mean, a lot of the things that you say, Sina, resonate with like actually what the tyrants at the head of this Epstein Empire have said themselves. I mean, Hegseth, he basically said, we can just try and exterminate the brutes. We will, unleash just violence. And we don't have to follow any, in fact, very proud of breaking any red lines that may exist in this, international law discourse. We're no longer going to be constrained by that because we're going to be full on imperialist, colonialists. And in fact, actually, they are trying to demonstrate in some ways a level of savagery. You know what it reminds me of? Of course, it reminds me of the Crusades. It reminds me of the cannibalism at Ma'arra that unleashed
Always the Crusades.
Always the Crusades.
kind of warfare. Now, do you realize that in the Latin West, in Christendom, when it actually kind of maybe meant something as an institutional formation, that in the Latin West, warfare and killing were, of course, considered sinful. And as a result, even if you were involved in something that could be framed or characterized as a just war, so-called, you still had to do penance for your sins, okay, for the violence that you committed. And so we have, for example, the list of penance for those who the Normans, for example, who fought at the Battle of Hastings and successfully, conquered. And it had been kind of agreed that it was okay, sort of quasi all right, they had the better claim, etc. But they still had to go and do penance. However, something new happens with the so-called plenary indulgence for those who go on crusade, is that they were free from the penance that they would have to do for the violence that they caused, because there was a new concept of sacred or holy war where you demonized the other, and where Pope Urban II even declared that our enemy is Amalek. Okay, so this Amalek is not just some Netanyahu sort of thing. It actually comes from Crusader Christian adoption of Old Testament precedent in a way of warfare that does not respect any of the traditional kind of legal, moral, or spiritual boundaries of violence, because violence is so dangerous. It's horrible to kill and to shed blood. And Christianity, in its core, understood this, said it's not even allowed at all. Okay, maybe a completely unrealistic position in a world of global affairs, which is why they had to invent some kind of idea that would have unrestricted violence. So when they attacked in the cities of the Levant, a place in, for example, in Al-Ma'arra, there are reports that not only did they have the practice sometimes, which the Mongols also did, which was, of like massacring the whole city, so that people, if they like put up any resistance, so that, other cities would know that there's going to be a terrible fate for you. And this is, of course, what they did in Jerusalem. They massacred the entire, population. I mean, so much to the extent that they said going up to the Holy Temple Mount, i.e. they're talking about the Dome of the Rock and where the last people surviving had taken sanctuary in this holy place, that the Latin chronicles say that it's on a hill. They say that it was like a river of charnel and blood flowing down the slopes from the mount, from where Al-Aqsa is. So they did do those things. But at Ma'arra, they even committed cannibalism, according to reports, to strike such fear into others as a form of terrorism. It was going beyond all boundaries of humanity and civilization to say, we will do to you something that is unthinkable in any social world that we share. So that's what we're seeing here, is the same kind of let's unleash all constraints and unleash a form of warfare. That first it's Dahya doctrine, then you can say it's the Rafah or Khan Yunus or Gaza doctrine, what they did, and now they're trying to apply it, and the US is adopting it as well, to do this on the people of Iran and the peoples of the region, precisely because, as you said, Sina, they know that they cannot really control Iran. What they need to do is de-develop it. They need to fragment and destroy it as a challenge, as a viable sovereign state that can be a challenge to Israeli dominance. And so if that means that it has to burn, its people kind of die, that it be chaos, they will do anything in order to achieve that goal of essentially underdeveloping. Like, Iran has made huge strides. Look at what they're capable of doing. Look at this incredible missile program. Look at the fact they are a threshold nuclear power. They have the potential to do that if they wanted to. So the point is that cannot be allowed to stand, that a sovereign nation with those capabilities and with those resources of energy, resources, not be allowed to continue on its path of development. So this war is partly an attempt to de-develop them. Walter Rodney wrote this very famous book, how Europe underdeveloped Africa through enslavement and the slave trade, the genocide essentially of 9 million people being enslaved, removed from their society and chained and working, for free in the plantations of, the New World, and through colonialism and colonial violence. This is the point. Europe only became a superpower in the so-called European takeoff because they were willing to unleash crusader-like colonial racial violence upon their foes, which went beyond anything that was understood as a norm in these societies that they were confronting. They were
Adnan, if I may, just to in that context, to draw viewers' attention to American history and the fact that I'm forgetting if it's Cotton or Increase Mather, but one of the Mathers, in writing about the destruction of the Pequot people, who at the time, they were the ones who had the food and the resources and knew what the fuck they were doing. The allowance to go and slaughter them was because they were Amalek.
Yes.
And the United States proceeded then, based on this doctrine, if you will, across North America, engaging in genocide all the way throughout until, Turner's the problem of the frontier, right? Well, that's because there isn't anymore. And I guess we'd better remember the Maine so we can go out and start slaughtering Filipinos and Cubans and take this show on the global road. So sorry to interrupt you, man, but I was just chomping to add that. I think it's Cotton Mather. I don't have the exact quote. But yeah, the Pequots were Amalek. Come straight across the country to, I've got a friend who lives in Eureka, California, and they there had the Wiyot massacre as the American colonialist transcended, the North American continent. They end up there in Eureka, California, where the Wiyot tribe had finally been pushed out to a little spit of land that's sort of like small little islands, a spit of land connected that you can see if you're in Eureka. And some bastards whose names are still honored through streets in Eureka and environs went out there with clubs and fucking massacred largely innocent, civilians and for the most part, old people, women, and children. And they are honored to this day in the city of Eureka, California, which still doesn't really do Asians or black people because we got rid of them when we burned them out in the late 19th century and the early 20th century. So this disgusting American genocidal history is still fresh with us. I have to say, I was watching The West. I wanted to see The West, the documentary. And I just became so disgusted and nauseated, like just a couple of installments through, looking at like pasty Anglo Americans, like with like a gun and a knife cross with their psycho eyes. And they're going to come to the state of California, which paid out $1.5 million in 1850 for Native American scalps. Because, the gold is there and fucking Amalek is here and we got to get rid of Amalek. So, here's some money to go and get rid of fucking Amalek and enjoy your rape along the way. Cause you don't get an extra fee for that, but some perks. So I'm sorry. I just, this entire American project is, and has been from the beginning, a genocidal, colonialist, and then subsequently imperialist project. And I'm just heartened to be able to see. And I think, before I die, the end of it, because it just fucking disgusts and nauseates me and has for decades. I'm glad that people who have been put off by my being nauseated about it and talking about it and, talking about where our tax dollars are going are finally actually fucking waking up. So I guess there is also a little weird schadenfreude there because now all of a sudden they give a shit. But yeah, Amalek. We are all Amalek to Benjamin Netanyahu and to this elite class of Zionist rapists and pedophiles.
That is really interesting. I'm going to have to look up the Cotton Mather. Great connection historically. So helpful, Dave. That was really important. Sina has posted here. I want to share it maybe if we can. Since he's
speaking of Schadenfreude,
he's become clearly the economist of the group. So here we are. What do you want to tell us about how insane
look at this
prices are
oh.
and their consequences?
Here, can you scroll down? Look at the chart. It's insane. Like it
Well,
speaks for
crude
itself.
oil, it's changing now, right? It's going up, 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 26.8%
Yeah.
up already.
But can you scroll down to the chart?
Oh, the chart. Oh, here. Okay. Yes.
Look at that. Look at that.
Brent crude, right. 114. So we're at 114 a barrel now.
That's
Right.
What part of what
like
Mohammed
this,
Morandi
this
was
is, and it's gonna. Oh, it's 114.
blue in the
Holy
face.
shit!
You forgot to go fill up your car, Sina. The truck. You foolish man for buying my truck. A gas guzzler.
Mohammed Morandi
got a
said
hybrid.
exactly what was going to happen.
Sold Cena a truck and got a hybrid. Who's the smart one here?
Look at the doors open.
Well, it wasn't that one, but you know. But yeah,
No,
Dave, you were saying something about
in the
that.
context of Benji's excellent points about white racism and arrogance. Many Iranian figures, including perhaps most importantly for an English language audience, Dr. Mohammed Morandi, were blue in the face for the last fucking 6 months saying exactly what was going to happen. Iran essentially through Morandi, like who's has served as a sort of unofficial both reporter and sort of interpreter for the nuclear talks for the JCPOA. He's been out every day, all day, under bombs. I mean, since June and before. I mean, for years, saying what would happen, exactly what Iran would do, and what would happen. He was even warning. He gave a kind warning to the family regimes of the littoral Gulf states to get out of town, because if the United States and Israel attack the Islamic Republic of Iran, then your countries aren't really going to be functional anymore. And so you should probably do all you can while you're packing up to make sure that your daddy Trump, who you gave a $400 million plane and what trillions of dollars, which Trump bragged about milking the Arab cow, which he gave you, everything, what Iran was going to do to, the Zionist entity, what Iran was going to do to American ships. Groups. I'm just saying, like nothing. Iran was very open about its capabilities and about what it was going to do in response. Should, especially during periods of negotiation, it be attacked once again. So anybody clutching pearls over the price of oil, or this was great. Did you guys see Mario Naufal with Norm Finkelstein the other day? And Norm actually, he said, have you ever talked to Emiratis? And as Mario was saying, I think he was going to say, I'm here in Dubai. He's like, have you talked to him? I mean, they're like retarded. That you got to hear retarded in Norm's voice. But it's like, sorry, you asked for it, Mario. What didn't you get about get the fuck out of Dodge? If Dodge happens to be a Zionist supporting collaborationist family dictatorship of the Persian Gulf, thinking that can step up to Iran's mad skills. Just sorry, you're going to get owned, and they are getting owned, and they deserve to get owned. I'm not sure if I'm more gleeful about the ownership, if you will, of Iraq's 19th province that they refer to as Kuwait, or Dubai. I think probably Dubai is giving me a little bit more personal enjoyment. And I'm just going to say that openly. I've been disgusted watching the UAE grow into just a cancerous collaborational threat to the whole region and to itself. And so in many ways, I think some of the Sunni Arabs of the peninsular region will thank the Islamic Republic of Iran for liberating them from the American empire and from potentially their despotic family regimes.
Oh, I've been talking about, how at the root of the present, what I see as the present collapse of the empire. Like, folks, this is not a once in a lifetime event. This is it's once in a lifetime event if you've been around for 550 years or something, right? It's an epoch changing moment. Everything is turning into its opposite. And there is a very special form, and the supremacy is what triggered it. But of course, based on a political economy that had served the supremacy for very long. And there's a very special form of white supremacy, which, infects not just white people, which is that white peoples are so smart that they've like they're infinity chess playing all the time, and they must have had a plan going into all this. But I think we've reached a point where this empire is not just agreement incapable, it's not just negotiation incapable, it is plan incapable. You know, literally, I believe, collectively speaking, the strategic planning horizon of this empire is equivalent to Trump's attention span, which at best is 3 minutes, but if it's about him. Otherwise, he can't keep focused on anything. He never reads anything. He gets all his news from Fox News. Well, the empire is Trump. Trump is the empire. The empire is smoking its own dope. It's literally Al Pacino towards the end of Scarface. It's been smoking the dope so much, and it's coming out, you know, say hello to my little friend kind of thing. And Pete Exas is exactly this. It's the say hello to my little friend phase of the empire. Or even Milikovsky, who said yesterday, they will see the surprise, you know, nobody expected. And what was the surprise? A plan, premeditated, looking at the weather report, chemical attack on 10 million people, right? That was the surprise. These people have no idea. There is no plan. They have no ordnance left. You know, they don't have weapons left. They don't have anything left except bluster, except just pretending it's not happening, just, you know, lullaing themselves to sleep. Iran says, you started this, we'll finish it. And like a 5-year-old, Excess says, they started it, we'll finish it. It's like, makes no sense. The Epstein files, I've seen some, you know, 5D chess theories. They put it out so that they could desensitize all the rest. No, they have no idea what they're doing. They can't hold themselves together anymore. No, you know, nobody could control Marjorie Taylor Greene or Thomas Massey. Nobody could predict this. Those are the catastrophic events that are happening because the whole thing makes no sense to anybody. Like nobody in their right mind who isn't, even actual Satanists are up in arms because they go, this is not how you do proper Satanism. This is God. This is the false stuff. Go away. Get out of here. And so what are you exactly working for, you know? So you just have a bunch of people who are controlled by compromise and videos of themselves bothering, you know, innocent souls in unimaginable positions who continue on kind of, you know, autopilot. But the problem is the autopilot is going straight into the wall and nobody can stop it. So then the only thing they have is accelerating, and they will accelerate. And I'm also saying it here simply for two reasons. First is because I'm on the life side of life. I don't believe death is going to happen to the planet. So forget about the nuclear holocaust. It won't happen. Also, just to think that it will happen just demoralizes us, serves no purpose, doesn't make us be useful. And you have a lot of adults in this room, you know, like you've had Lavrov, and they've actually killed the Zionists in Moscow. You understand? They have shut off any possible breathing oxygen for the Zionists who were very strong in Moscow. You know, you have 2 million Russians, 1 million of whom have nothing to do with Judaism whatsoever in the colony at the moment. And strangely enough, they're the most genocidal, you know, whatever crazies. But they can't, there's no space for them anymore. So you had Putin, I mentioned, you know, laying the biggest wreath you ever saw for Martyr Khamenei. And now you have Lavrov, you know, gunning down saying, we are going to create an atmosphere where this can't go too far. Like, you know, when the world's biggest nuclear power with missiles that actually work, unlike the US, you look at their cruise missile, a dud rate of 25%. Russian missiles are not like this. It's saying we're going to create an atmosphere in which this is not possible. When he has all the little, you know, chihuahuas or whatever you call them, low lives, pawn scum from the Gulf in front of him, and he says, so you're writing a resolution to the Security Council which only criticizes Iran and not the Americans or Israel? Don't you think you're a little bit hypocritical? Look a little bit, at your own backside, because it doesn't smell very good from where I'm sitting, and it's absolutely disgusting. You've not heard this from the Russians before. And so that's it. It's the perfect storm. You have the Chinese giving the most exquisite targeting ever. It doesn't matter. They can shut the entity can shut off the internet. They would do it, except, as Stina said, if they can't be on their telephone, they're out of Dodge the next day. They will actually swim back to Greece or to Cyprus just to get an internet connection, right? And maybe I would also. I don't know. I have to think about that. And they don't need to see videos. You guys on Twitter need to see videos so you feel good. But the Iranians don't. They get like probably 5 centimeter resolution information, real-time information from the Chinese satellites. What do they need? And also the Chinese, in case you're not aware, have the most advanced electronic warfare ship in the world. They have this thing that soon as you can see it over the horizon, no Western radar or detection system can actually know where it is. It drives them absolutely crazy, and it's somewhere in the Gulf. And it was also, by the way, during the 12 Days War. So it's, as my son said, I never thought I would say it until I saw Sina say it. It's Joe over. It's Joe over. It's all over, except, heartbreakingly, the genociding, because that's what these crazies do when they come down. And it's weird to say, but you know what? The Nazis were actually a mild version of those crazies. Maybe because of Heinrich Heine or Goethe or something. The real loonies are the effing Brits. I mean, they bombed Dresden for no reason. They killed millions in India. These people are the devil incarnate. They are literally, they're born psychopaths. Look at their book of, what's it called? The Lord of the Flies. They imagine that if you put children on a desert island, they will turn into monsters to one another. You have to be crazy. And these people have studied other societies, really, where they put everything in their British Museum. By the way, did you see the Chinese thing where they're mapping every single artifact in the British Museum, where it comes from, where they stole it from? They have everything, and they study it to define the society in the way, psychopathic children study a fly. They look at a fly and then they take off one leg and see what the fly does. Only the British could have invented this joke. The joke is, what do you call a fly with no legs? A walk. A walk. To make a joke like this, which I don't think exists in any other country than Britain except as a translation, it means you must have actually tortured the fly for kicks. And this is what those Brits do, and they are worse, believe me, than the Nazis. So the genociding is going to be pretty bad until it's brought down. And I think the Iranians, for miraculous reason, are in this point of history and this moment, in this conjuncture, where they are the ones who are going to, not on their own, right? It's the axis of resistance, bring this thing down. There was this beautiful video of Jeffrey Sachs at the United Nations talking to this guy is straight from hell, right? Danny Dannon. Have you seen this guy? He looks like the Pepe the Frog or something, right? And you could see Sachs screaming at him. And you know what Sachs said? Sachs said, and Sachs knows, this is suicide. And Sachs is upset because his precious little Zionist project is committing suicide by axis of resistance, which, by the way, is the title of our next episode. This is what is happening. This is what we are seeing. Open your eyes wide. Know what to believe and not what to believe. You know what to believe, the resistance, nothing else you need to believe. Because if you live 500 years, you'll be able to tell your whatever they are at the time, grandchildren, that you were there when it all happened.
Yes, well, This is a good opportunity, a good moment, as we're getting maybe close to winding down here and a round of final statements. Just to remind you, first, like the stream, share it. There's many of you in the audience, but they're boosted on the algorithm so more people. This was absolutely, I mean, every single one of these Iran versus the Epstein Empire has really warmed my heart, boosted my spirits, and giving me so much, to think about and consider, but above all, to feel more confident, more determined. And that's what we have to do. So make sure that your comrades, your friends, your family get to feel the same way. Share it, subscribe to the channel. But also, we're always doing our best to support the people of Palestine. So just as a reminder, we are still doing our fundraiser for the Samir Project's Ramadan campaign. There have been quite a number of you who have donated and really helped and supported this campaign. It is now up, from the 265,000 pounds I mentioned, it is now up to 267,000. So that is an impact that you are making with your contributions and support. So I thank you so much. Please continue to do that. But let me turn it over to, Sina for some of his final comments, and he wants to show us Sina the economist, no longer Sina the producer, but Sina the economist.
Well,
here we go.
Sina, yeah, it's actually dual use. It's Sina the screenshot hoarder, because I came across this thread and it's been like haunting me, because this thing is way bigger than just oil and this war and Palestine. Like, okay, so for people who are listening to this is a thread from Long Arc News. It doesn't smell like Chat BLT. It may be, who knows, but we'll see. It smells kind of organic. I don't know. This is what you have to say now, but every long thread on Twitter, you have to wonder, like, is this person Chat BLT? But anyways, the Hormuz closure is not a 6-week shock. It is an 18-month stress test for the global food system. Most allocators are trading the obvious. Oil up, defense up, gold up. They are missing the connective tissue. One third of globally traded fertilizer transits Hormuz. Okay, let's say that again. One third of
Definitely AI.
globally
Sina, I'm
traded
calling it now.
fertilizer
This is
transits Hormuz.
AI. That's AI. That is
Well, okay,
Chat
fine.
BLT,
There's
as you
no
call it.
strategic reserve for nitrogelism. There is no strategic reserve for nitrogen fertilizer. Oil has the SPR. Fertilizer has nothing. Okay, SPR is strategic reserve, obviously. Let's go to the next one. A closure during spring planting forces import-dependent farmers to apply significantly less. The African Development Bank warned in 2022 that fertilizer shortages could cut African food production by 20%. Okay. By late summer, vulnerable populations face food price spikes approaching levels NE something. NEXI linked to 2008 food riots and 2011 MENA unrest. India, Kharif season on a knife edge. India imports 50 or 60% of its DAP. Nearly all its potash and urea imports climbed 85% year over year. Much of it transiting Hormuz. Kharif sowing begins in June. India absorbs global fertilizer price spikes through subsidies. In 2022-2023, that bill hit 2.5 trillion rupees. A prolonged closure doesn't just threaten 1.4 people's food supply, it detonates the fiscal math. A sovereign balance sheet event disguised as a commodity story. China, the quiet squeeze. China looks isolated at the world's second largest fertilizer producer, but it imports 61% of its sulfur across a critical phosphate input from Gulf suppliers. Actually, you know who has a lot of phosphate? I think, or sulfur? I think Iran does. I'm not sure. I think it was one of the things that Iran was giving Syria for nothing. Maybe I gotta check that. 40% of China's oil and 30% of its LNG, liquid natural gas transit Hormuz. Rising energy costs feed directly into fertilizer production via the Haber-Bosch process. I don't know what that is. I have to look that up. Worse, China has suspended phosphate exports through August 2026 to secure the domestic supply. Countries that depended on Chinese phosphate now face Hormuz cutting off Gulf supply and Chinese policy cutting off the alternative. Two walls closing simultaneously, like closing in, cutting off, whatever. So like this is for me something that's like I just don't see how this crisis, like right now, because I feel like the only chance they really have, like the imperialists, which is to say, the only chance they really has if this goes on like 6 months. But the thing is, they can't go on 6 months. They can't even go on another 6 days at this rate. I mean, the cost of diesel is like, it's insane right now. Like my son, he's not my son, my fake son. He like told me today, and he was like, diesel's like over $2. Like that's insane right now. We can't afford this level, and it's going to be passed on to us. We were already having a food crisis. We were already having a major affordability crisis. This now makes everything worse. So again, this is one of those examples of like, one of those things that was like, you know, the unforeseen, or maybe not unforeseen, but in the sense that I've always said this, Iran has a double-barrel shotgun to the head of the global economic system. And it's not just like the economic system. It's like multiple heads. It's like, I was thinking about the end of, do you remember the end of, the end of Mice of Men, where the poor guy has to put out Lenny. He's like, here you go. Here, hold a rabbit, Lenny. Here, pet this soft little rabbit. I'm going to put you out of your misery because they're going to come and murder you. So that's what like his friend did. And Iran is like doing that. But instead of Lenny, it's like the global economic system, right? And along with it, our food system. Now, do I laugh at that? Do I smile? Do I have schadenfreude? Obviously not. The financial stuff, yes. But the food stuff like this, like people will die. Like potentially millions if like these, like we are dependent on this fertilizer. We are dependent on this food system. What, we're gonna go to small scale farms. We're gonna invent the replicator from Star Trek TNG. Like these are not options for us. This is what we have. Like, yeah, victory garden, defeat gardens, more like it. But yeah, like this is not. This adventurism on the part of the Zio-American entity, this will have consequences for like decades, maybe centuries at this point. I mean, who knows? If they really go crazy and they drop nukes on Iran, which they've threatened, which they gleefully threaten all the time. I mean, the guy who put Trump into office, Sheldon Adelson, said it in public. He said, "Oh, just drop a nuke in the desert." Like they talk like this. So I don't know. We're fucked. Yeah, 3D print your bagels,
I would hate for this episode to end on, you know, big time dooming.
Don't worry, we have David.
Number one, let me tell you that the world sulfur supply, as someone helpfully told us in the chat, is safe because every time Milikovsky opens his mouth, the world sulfur supply is replenished in an instant. And there's an infinite, from where this comes from until we get him into the Free People of the World Tribunal in al-Quds. I personally won't go into that dooming. I'm calling it now, Sina. This was AI. Some of the information was true. All the predictions are just predictions, you know. There's this thing about economic prediction, including those made by economists and not just AI, is 70% of them are actually wrong. So I wouldn't, go, hey, the world is going to end and all of it.
I mean, the thing is, if 30% of fertilizer disappears, if 30%, like that's not, you can't AI, that's not like a,
no,
it's
I
done.
know.
We're done. We have no food system.
I'm not arguing with the numbers. What I'm saying is, and I've said it before, it's all over except the genociding, and costs may come to the core. I mean, we've been living on the hog for the past 500 years. Those of us who have been born, raised, or lived as settlers in the core, or plunderers in Western Europe, and some of those costs may come to us. Well, that's tough shit, but we've been at it for so long. If there's such a thing as poetic justice, it would be it. But in terms of what we're doing here, we have to look at the general movement. The movement is towards the end of this empire. Will it die peacefully? Of course not. Gracefully? Of course not. Will it cost some of the people in the core who couldn't stop it from inside? I would be very surprised if it didn't. But this is the price we pay. And Brother David, told us at the beginning the superpower of what makes Iran different in the sense, and that's that sense of not just faith, but that you have to pay a price if you want to fight for life, fight for good, and fight against evil. And we just have to accept that we are going to pay this price at last. That's okay.
Well, praise the sun. Says, important note, when that tweet talks about food, they're talking about cash crops like soybeans, not food humans are eating. The tweet, although, people do eat soybean-based products, but
cows eat
other
those.
uses.
Yeah,
We
like
can
that's
survive without cows. I know you really want a steak, Sina, but most people in the world for most of human history had meat very infrequently because it was super expensive, and it's only in the modern industrial capitalist overconsumption food system that they have created this demand for the idea that meat is like a regular part of like every meal. Like that's what's happened in the United States. You got to have meat at every meal, and that is totally a distortion of 10,000 years of human history of diet. And we were okay. Maybe health has improved to some extent, but to be honest, with all of the preservatives, additives, and processed food, we've actually probably started harming ourselves much more. So I would say, if we go back to that, the tweet was a Chat GPT prompt for, quote, how does oil impact food production? Now, I don't know if this is exactly correct, but at any rate, that could be part of it. Although we had earlier a point from another poster who said, Chitimacha 1025, there are a few new stories about what's happening in Iran having a potential impact on the nitrogen fertilizers. Independent of this X-thread may not be AI. So we don't know, but, I think the point Benji is making is that, there's a lot of...
It's going to be catastrophic, guys. We won't be able to throw away 35% of the food we buy anymore. That's what's going to happen to us.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump might die if he can't get cheeseburgers.
Right. Okay. So you're saying that there is a potential silver lining in all of this. But I mean, obviously there are going to be huge economic impacts, right? That we know, like the oil price, and it is true, fertilizer will be super expensive. It's going to have all kinds of effects, but does that mean that we can't adapt to it? Yeah. And does it mean that those pressures might actually be, kind of useful in reorienting our approach?
Actually, this is what happened in the global south, right? Cuba reorganized its agriculture to use much less fertilizer. Venezuela developed food self-sufficiency since the latest round of sanctions. The same is happening in every country. So we'll get a version of those sanctions, and it will be tough for a while, and then we'll learn to live of our own wits instead of just projecting nonsense.
Sina's actually in good shape because he has all kinds of land and a huge greenhouse. So I'm going to go to Sina's house and make sure to eat my fresh veggies in the apocalypse. Make the extra guest bed, Sina. But Dave, maybe we could ask you for some of your roundup final thoughts.
I have something kind of succinct that I feel is kind of a positive note, for at least for me to bow out on. But it's sort of this, how we've come to realize that whoever you vote for in the United States of America, you get John McCain. Okay, so that's our problem. That's the problem that the American people need to deal with. Look in the mirror, read the Constitution, and decide whether they want to be fucking passive sheep or actually like humans with agency. But I would just say the equivalent in the Islamic Republic of Iran would be whoever you kill in Iran, you're going to get the new Iranian supreme leader. You're going to get the Rais. You're going to get the Rahbar. You're going to get the new Faqih. So, whether American imperialist assholes and Zionists like that or not, it's not up to you. It has nothing to fucking do with you. You're irrelevant. So I would say focus on your criminal, pedophile, rapist, thieving, genocidal leadership, and fuck right off from the Islamic Republic of Iran, who I feel like the world that acted against Iran should feel lucky that with a sound apology and with some heart, you will be ultimately forgiven, and maybe you will be not any of the royalists from LA, because they should not go to Iran. I will warn them against that for their health. But anybody else around the world will be welcome eventually to enjoy the beauty and the culture and the hospitality and the, if you will, human strength of Iran and its nation and the Iranian people. So I think that's really a positive thing for most of the world, and for Iran, Zionists and twerking, sellout OnlyFans Iranian Pahlavi supporters, they're shit out of luck, and I'm going to laugh my ass off for the rest of my life about that. I have also realized, though, and seriously, and I'm not to be negative, but I consider it positive, but I'm never going to go to Cello Kebab in LA again, because I don't want to have to punch some asshole in the fucking face. So I'll just get my kebab in a place where none of those bastards, we say toh masag in Farsi, where none of them will ever be able to enjoy it, and that's in the Islamic Republic of Iran. With some of you, my brothers, inshallah.
Inshallah. I
So
think
my
North York.
ending. While Iranians and Palestinians are still being slaughtered, that's about as positive as I can get. But
yes. Well, I
we
guess
will
North
survive
York.
this. Yes, and we will survive American and Zionist stupidity and arrogance. Absolutely.
Inshallah. I guess North York is off limits for me and Cena. That's the LA equivalent. And in fact, actually,
where I grew up there.
I know you were surrounded by them, Cena. But the thing is I saw actually. I was going to play these, but we're winding down. But I saw dueling Vancouver protests. One was these fascistic monarchists.
The Vancouver ones are insane too.
It looked like a Nuremberg rally, and I think Samira Mohiuddin actually published her tweet. She said, diaspora holds Nuremberg rallies. And I mean, these were people draped in their Pahlavi flag, with the lion, being led in a chant, "Thank you, Trump. Thank you, Trump." They were doing this, and thank you, Netanyahu.
No, they said thank you. He said thank you.
That's true. He said thank you, Trump.
It's okay. It's okay, guys. We're parking our tanks on their lawns.
That's right.
And it's all over about the shouting. Don't worry about that. They're just a bunch of clowns.
But there was another one that was also, kind of no war, and it was also a very substantial one. And Dave sent me. So finally, I think maybe there's being a little waking up of, people in the imperial core, that this is spiraling way out of control, and that our leaders are taking us into devastation and destruction. For the empire, which is a good thing, but also, causing a lot of slaughter and genocide, because, as Benji was saying, that seems to be the only tactical plan that survives the battle, right? Their plan A, B, and C, what they're left with is just doing genocide on, people, because that is, of course, one of the, if not the paramount Western value.
I'll bet they're basically asking ChatGPT, what do I do next? I'll bet you my bottom dollar that's what these idiots are doing.
Well, maybe they're not going to get good answers, because a lot of the data centers that they invested in the Gulf have been hit by Iranian missiles. So AI poof, the bubble is bursting right now. It was a bubble. It would have burst, but Iran has punctured perhaps the bubble by, undermining the capabilities of all of this like global finance being invested in the Gulf countries to sponsor.
And also
like
there was This paper just came out that if you have a conversation with AI, the more you ask recursive questions, the more nonsense it spouts. So the more they go to AI and say, so what do I do now? What do I do now? I did this, I did that. The more the answers are just made up by the AI. So,
Well,
there's no way you win a war that way.
when
Basically, it
AI
doesn't
gets
happen.
like to that point where it's clear that no other answer is like helping you and you're really depressed, doesn't it tell you to commit suicide? I mean, so maybe that's what they are getting
That's
suicide.
what it said. Commit suicide by AOR. And they
Yep.
went, yeah,
We
that's
will
a
have
good
an
idea.
episode, the next guarantee, the next episode of Axis of Resistance versus the Epstein Empire, because we're going to redub it. That is going to be suicide by AOR. But I just wanted to, like, kind of in my own conclusion, there had been a question in the chat about, will Bahrain the government in Bahrain get overthrown? And there was a couple of points. And I actually had this question earlier today about the status of it, because I saw some reports overnight early this morning about, protests, lots of like things in flames and people being shot at, and while also there missiles falling. So it was kind of a dramatic situation, but some people were denying that, like, the so-called, I don't even like to call them royal family, the ruling family happened to be ruling family had left, and that there was imminent toppling of the government. And so I asked some friends about it. A friend of the show, Lara Shihai, who has contacts across the Gulf and people she knows, and she got back to me and said to our chat, said people are indeed in the streets of Bahrain trying to overthrow their government. This is like, during the stream, she sent these messages. The royal family fled. So, okay, the ruling family has fled, according to sources that she has, that it seems to be clear that perhaps they have. The situation has become unmanageable. And in fact, actually, a lot of these elites have already decamped, to other places further away. There was a lot of suggestion.
Why would they stay? Why would they stay? Their whole protection racket is gone.
Well, it's exactly like what the Pahlavi was called. I mean, I think I heard Ali Alizadeh say this, and I remember this being the case, is that there were so many times where the Pahlavis, had to run away from their own people because they wanted to, rule themselves, that he was called the suitcase king. It's like his bag was packed at every time in case he had to, like, flee at a moment's notice. The USA, CIA, would tell him, yeah, get the hell out of there. We can't control this situation, and he would jet. So they are nothing other than that. I mean, they are this, kind of like, when you talk about strategic depth, I mean, they are there because the U.S., first the British and then the U.S. has put them there for a purpose. So anyway, just completing what Lara sent me, Iran and Hezbollah. Well, okay, that's she's saying will hopefully liberate us all. Well, yes, indeed, we hope that. That's what we're hoping for. That's what we're seeing, the process of that happening. And she said that apparently these protests have really been nonstop in Bahrain. So, that's an interesting update, about the situation there. Last thing that I'll just say by way of conclusion, is that, of course, give to the Samir Project. I hope more of you have donated over the last, few minutes since we've been doing this, but also is this, this post that we had, that I saw, that I really loved, from Helia Dutari. So I'm going to share again. She made a really interesting post about the difference between Israelis hiding in bunkers and millions of Iranis bravely being in the streets, and that the difference she characterized as a settler colony. How settler colonists behave, ready to leave at a moment's notice as well. If things get bad, so many of them are fleeing, finding a way to leave, or cowering in their, bunkers and shelters and so on.
Circle the wagons, isn't it? It's really circle the wagons.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, it's circle the wagons or it's get the hell out of Dodge, like one or the other. Like, I mean, but that the contrast is like of an indigenous people, how do indigenous people, respond to these threats and attacks and bombardments? They stand up, they stay where they are, and they stand up for themselves, one another. And so I thought that was just a wonderful contrast. And it reminded me of, and I wrote a little bit about it, but it reminded me so much of this video that I saw, the of and the contrast between the people and what they're chanting in these squares. Lots of videos that we saw last time that Dave had sort of shared with me. Singing, drawing on traditional Shi'i religious the themes of martyrdom, love for the family of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as well as folk culture and folk songs in places like Ahvaz, the Lures. There, we're singing, things that are related to their particular folk culture, but they were suffused now. These traditional motifs are suffused with revolutionary resistance language and meaning now. And also something very important, solidarity. Solidarity with Palestine. This is not just, it also reminds us that the axis of resistance has developed a new technique, a new social technology of demonstrating their resolve and determination against, the empire and for anti-colonial resistance, not just for themselves, but for others and the world. So it's not just a question of we are indigenous nationalists and we will fight to stay on our land. They do, but they also recognize solidarity. So remember the Ansarullah rallies, those incredible Friday rallies, even amidst US declared war on them for 6 weeks, they came out in bigger numbers. They came out more defiant, and they were chanting that we are going to free al-Quds. In fact, they said at the time when there was the most horrible situation of starvation with the Gaza genocide, they put out, claims. I saw so many things, and these big rallies, even though they were under attack as well from Israel and the US, they said, you other Arab countries, get out of the way. We are right now ready to march. If you let us go through your territory, we are ready to march on al-Quds. That's the revolutionary spirit. Tehran or al-Quds, Sana'a or al-Quds, Beirut or al-Quds. It's going to be al-Quds. And they have done.
And that's the Ummah. And that's the Ummah, folks. The Ummah only exists when you transcend the boundaries of your sectarianism and your community. Going out and helping a fellow Muslim who's part of your community and being Muslimy together. Sorry, that's not the Ummah. The Ummah only existed before the fitnas, before the first civil wars. And if you want to embody the Ummah, transcend your local, parochial, like sectarian boundaries and all of these, I won't use expletives, but these people who thought that sectarianism and whatever, just their hate was going to help Syria out somehow. So when and if, like the Houthis, like Ansar Allah, you can put yourself out there for fellow Muslims who are not of your traditional sect or tradition, there you have created the Ummah. You are helping to sustain and extend the Ummah. So the Ummah doesn't just exist as this warm feeling that I'm a Muslim and there's an entire global community of Muslims. That's just some bullshit, actually. That doesn't exist, folks. It only exists when you take action as a human being that God gave you the ability to engage in. So that's my last.
I'll make one concluding comment, if I may, about we opened tonight's episode with the selection of Ayatollah Sayyid Murtaba Hosseini Khamenei as the successor of his father. And someone in the chat said, yeah, he's going to want to avenge his father. I actually believe that is not the case. The best homage he is going to give to his father is not to avenge him, but to complete the life's mission of Khamenei, who actually volunteered to be martyred for it, which is the final liberation of al-Quds, which also means the final expulsion of the Epstein Empire from West Asia, which also means, for, by the way, all the economic reasons that Sina mentioned, the death blow to the vampire Epstein Empire. That's
Indeed.
my
And
concluding comments.
I guess just to complete the sort of contrast that I saw was not only that they're writing a new story in the annals of resistance, right? You know, in this creation of this kind of defiant popular resistance culture, but that you compare it to like a video that I saw of all these Israelis in a bunker, you know, thinking this is defiance and that, you know, they can handle it, they can take it, playing and dancing to I Will Survive, the Gloria Gaynor, you know, I will all individually kind of like, you know, jumping around, singing and all that. It's an English language song. They're in this bunker and all they're talking about is I will survive. Okay.
And it's about survival from sexual abuse, I'll have you know, in case
Well, that's
you didn't know.
interesting. I didn't even know that they've appropriated that. How appropriate for the Epstein Empire's anthem.
Absolutely.
You know, so, at any rate, the contrast is really huge, and you know that should give us hope and faith. We have to, of course, be real and watch what's happening, and you know, be clear. But I think, you know, here on day 9, we can say. The end game, inshallah, is in sight, you know, and more power to the resistance. And I want to just remind everybody, please give to the Samir Project and say that the chat has been absolutely hopping. And it's beautiful to see this community expanding. I see a lot of like familiar, you know, handles and people who have been around and people who I know from other contexts who are here, as well as many, many new people raising good questions, discussing with one another. And I thank you for your participation, for being part of these special evenings where we've had this opportunity to collect together, to talk about what's going on, and to give one another not only analysis and understanding, but hope and encouragement, and to propel us towards action. So what can you be doing in this time of disinformation? What can you be doing, you know, in any respect to put the brakes on this terrible war and create solidarity and resistance in all its forms in your community, in your life, in your workplace? Talk to people, inform people about what's going on, share these streams as resources. There's a lot of good stuff out there, not only here, but on East as a podcast. Resistance is Fertile. And you know, all of our other comrades, Lara Shihai's Psychic Militancy, Jay and others at Millennials Are Killing Capitalism. You know, there's a you know,
Justin's sitrep, we're still waiting for it.
Yes, we're waiting for Justin's sitrep. I was, you know, even gonna suggest, you know, I was hoping it was going to be out last night so that I could read it and then have some thoughts that we could react to here, because he always has such interesting insights. So, you know, what we should do also, yes, do check out Guerrilla History. History is a resource. History is a weapon. Don't forget your history. So
right now,
yeah. So,
yeah.
All right, everyone, peace with justice, solidarity to you all, and free Palestine.
Free Palestine, and victory to the free people of the world.
Ameen.
Free Palestine. Bye, guys.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.